This shaved head guy is a notorious ruthless school bully that everyone is terrified of, but just 3 months after being sent to a juvenile detention center, the brat is already being hauled away in a transport van. He joined the disabled club because the South Korean government, feeling helpless against the rising tide of juvenile delinquency, decided to scrap the juvenile protection law. Now, when these brats commit a crime, they are sent straight to a military-run facility for rehabilitation. If they dare to disobey, the guards will teach them a lesson using physical-mechanical methods. Lee Min-soo was just an ordinary student, but he was framed and ended up in this place. He thought his life was over, destined for a hellish, brutal existence. Little did anyone expect that, from a weakling who was constantly bullied, Min-soo would turn the tables step by step, rising to become the boss of the prison school. Nurse Kim couldn't help but be surprised when, witnessing the long line of students waiting in front of the mobile blood donation bus. The number of participants at this school is many times higher than anywhere else. The nurses keep praising the noble spirit of the kids, though in their hearts they find it strange since teenagers these days usually aren't interested in donating blood. But the truth behind that long line isn't as noble as they think. The students are rowdy, urging each other to hurry up because they're about to run out of time to trade for money. A male student curiously asks how much one blood donation voucher is worth and gets a firm answer: 5,000 won. In a corner of the yard, Lee Min-soo is sitting on a crate, his hands deftly counting thick stacks of cash. Seeing a customer looking hesitant, he pitches, "Come on, 2 vouchers, that's 10,000 won total. Support me again next time, yeah." The students scramble around him to trade vouchers for pocket money to spend on games. Ignoring that lunch break is almost over, Min-soo wears a sinister smile while explaining his scheme. He buys gift vouchers worth 5,000 won for 10,000 won. It sounds like a losing business, but his true goal lies in the blood donation vouchers that come with them. He knows the hidden value of each blood voucher is around 12,000 won. He just needs to post them on forums for 10,000 won. For people in urgent need of blood transfusions, messages from customers flood in non-stop. However, the reason why no one else dares to pull this off is because it's against the law. But for Lee Min-soo, a minor, he is completely fearless. He arrogantly thinks that even if he gets caught, he will only get a warning. The current state of society is deteriorating as crimes ranging from violence and theft to fraud and even murder committed by minors are pushing boundaries. Even when facing the most serious crimes, the law still cannot properly deal with them. Counting the stack of money in his hand, Min-soo mutters to himself, 600,000 won. This month's business is pathetic. He nonchalantly assumes the police will never bother with cases without specific victims like this. But in reality, business is never as easy as he thought. Just as his complacency began to bloom, a thunderous kick flew straight into his face, sending Min-soo sprawling. All the money and gift vouchers scattered everywhere on the ground. He bitterly realizes that once you choose a path of crime, you yourself will soon become a target of another crime. Min-soo lies on the ground groaning in pain, coughing violently, while footsteps slowly approach him. He understands the price of a criminal seeking profit. Stop whining. Who the hell here feels sorry for you? A group of tall youths surrounds him. A blonde guy smiles maliciously and asks Min-soo, "Did you make a lot of money today?" Min-soo can only grit his teeth and curse in helplessness because he knows in this hellhole he has absolutely no one to protect him. Looking up at the wall covered in slogans about education laws, rehabilitation, and a world without school violence, Min-soo feels it's all just a stupid and ridiculous joke. He despises this miserable world and thinks those moral platitudes are just empty talk that solves nothing. Meanwhile, the bullies keep mocking him and spewing insults. One guy in the group even shamelessly farts, making the air around them pungent. The leader, smoking while roughly pinning Min-soo's head to the ground, lowers his voice to threaten him. If you've got money, you've got to pay up to the top. What did you become a cripple after coming to reform school? After saying that, he casually spits right in Min-soo's face with contempt. He asserts firmly that without Jo Chang-soo, Min-soo is nothing. The bully's face suddenly reveals a hint of wariness when mentioning that name. He admits, Jo Chang-soo is 100 times scarier than him. But you know what today Jo Chang-soo is getting out of the camp? Min-soo's eyes widen, trembling in sheer horror at the sound of the name Jo Chang-soo. Jo Chang-soo is actually the mastermind of a criminal organization formed by juvenile delinquents in this area. Almost everyone here has been a victim of his, but absolutely no one dares to admit they are a victim. Why? Because they are terrified of the brutal revenge that happens in the dark shadows of the law. Truth be told, he is the type of madman who can do the worst things without even blinking. Returning to the scene, the bullies keep laughing as they see Min-soo trembling with fear. You talk like you're close friends. Is Chang-soo your buddy or something? They gloat witnessing his miserable state and continue to press him. Come on, pay your tax. You don't want to be hated by Chang-soo, right? Min-soo bows his head, his hand reaching into his pocket as if to grab money, and mumbles, "Ah, I get it. Here, take it." But instead of giving money, he suddenly sticks his middle finger at them and roars with fury, "Here a gift for you pieces of trash. Take it." This provocative act struck the pride of the leader, Tai Woong. He screams furiously, "You've got a death wish. How dare you mess with me?" Immediately, a brutal beating rains down, leaving Min-soo curled up and taking the hits. His accomplices standing outside not only don't intervene, but also laugh. Tai Woong is really pissed off now. This kid is really easy to set off. In a fit of uncontrolled rage, Tai Woong grabs a nearby shovel and growls, "Don't stop me today, I'm gonna finish this guy off." Ignoring the warnings about potentially ending up in the detention center, he insanely asserts he will make Min-soo live in terror of him from now on, just like they fear Jo Chang-soo. But before the shovel could come down, a powerful impact suddenly struck him, causing him to collapse instantly. Witnessing that horrific sight, the lackeys froze in their tracks, their faces showing extreme terror. A mysterious foot suddenly appeared right in front of his eyes, making Min-soo, despite being severely injured, look up with a look of stunned surprise. "Stop school violence!" A steely voice rang out, breaking the tense atmosphere. It was Kang Yu-seong, the student council president. He calmly removed his glasses, walked over, helped Min-soo up, and kindly asked, "Are you okay, Lee Min-soo?" The surrounding students began whispering and buzzing. They quickly recognized the normally model president, but couldn't understand why he showed up here with such an unusual appearance. Interrupted, Tai Woong screams madly, "Who the hell are you?" He swings the shovel, threatening to kill everyone. Then he showed up again looking completely different, and Tai Woong, furious at being interrupted, screamed, "Who the hell do you think you are?" He swung his shovel, threatening to kill them all. Even in reform school, it's not too late. Facing that aggression, he dodged the attack with artistic precision, causing the bully's shovel to swing through empty air. Before his opponent could even process what happened, Yu-sung grabbed him by the shoulder, pulled him close, and growled, "Have you ever killed anyone?" He shoved the bully's head into the pavement, forcing a pathetic cry of pain. Yu-sung coldly warned him about the price to pay for taking someone else's life. A sickening crunch of bone rang out, followed by the bully's shrill screams. "Ah, wait, wait!" After all that talk, he was now begging for mercy. In extreme agony, he desperately screamed for his lackeys to jump Yu-sung. The remaining thugs, seeing their boss humiliated, rushed forward. "You bastard! You think you're safe just because you stepped in." But Yu Sung maintained a terrifying calmness. He continued to dodge and land precise counterattacks, making the bullies collapse one by one. Yu Sung grabbed one guy by the head and ruthlessly slammed him into the ground without a hint of mercy. Witnessing this horrifying scene, the last thug was so scared he couldn't even stand. He stammered, trying to explain that he was just pretending to attack, and begged Yu Sung not to come any closer. "Wait, seriously, don't come over here." "No." A painful scream echoed as Yu Sung decisively took down the bullies. "I told you, no school violence." Watching his retreating back, Misu, the student body president, softly called out, "Kang Yu Sung," hearing his name. Yu Sung stopped, though his hand was still gripping the collar of an opponent. He turned his head back, a cryptic smile on his face. "Call me brother, not by my full name," Misu retorted bitterly. "You bastard, you're not my brother anymore. Stop meddling in my business." Yu Sung coldly stated, "You are my little brother, no matter what you think. We are still brothers." Faced with that persistence, Misu could only turn away in silence. Yu Sung glanced at his brother's wrist and mocked the old cheap watch, telling him to throw it away. It's embarrassing for someone adopted by a rich family to wear such cheap trash. That watch was etched with the words, "Penguin Orphanage," a keepsake Misu always cherished. Seeing Misu sullenly walk away, Yu Sung shouted, asking if he was going to school, but only received a reckless reply. "Leave me alone, I'm going home." Yu Sung sighed in frustration, mumbling that his brother was an idiot. Yet the secret lay on the very wrist of the successful wealthy student president, as he too was wearing that same old orphanage watch, exactly like his younger brothers. Misu walked away, tormented inside. He feared that Yu Sung's interference in these fights would affect his future of getting into medical school. One is an elite student body president accepted directly into a prestigious medical school, while the other is a troubled delinquent. The ironic truth is that they are biological brothers sharing the same blood. The older brother was originally named Lee Hyun-soo, but after being adopted by a wealthy family, he changed his name to Kang Yu-seung. While his brother stepped into a new, glorious life, Misu sullenly returned to where he started. He stopped at the gates of Penguin Orphanage, the place where he remains stuck. In reality, Misu walked alone in the empty alley, his heart heavy with thoughts of his brother. He told himself that Yu Sung shouldn't get involved with him anymore, so he wouldn't become a burden hindering his brother's bright future. While Yu Sung heads toward the light, Misu chooses a dark, lonely path just to survive. He stopped in front of a donation bin for used clothes locked tightly, where he hid all the assets he had scraped together. Inside the bag was a stack of cash and blood donation vouchers totaling 3.4 million won. Hiding in a dark corner, Misu calculated, "I'm still 6.6 million short. Should I just go rob a bank?" He worried because it would be 3 months until the blood donation truck returned to school, so he had to start considering going to other schools to keep making money. Misu's obsession with money stemmed from a harsh reality: only 2 years left until he had to leave Penguin Orphanage. Even with the 5 million won support from the state, it was nowhere near enough for the high cost of rent. As a juvenile orphan, he knew even getting a part-time job was impossible. It was a miserable life. Even though he knew what he was doing was illegal, it was the only way to make quick money and stop being a burden to his brother. Suddenly, a large shadow loomed over Misu from behind. The bully, with a face distorted by a wicked grin, mocked him. "Our Misu has so much money, huh?" He roughly placed a hand on Misu's shoulder and leaned in to whisper a malicious threat, saying that money from criminal activities would all be confiscated by the state once caught. Facing his insane laughter and suffocating proximity, Misu could only tremble and ask in fear, What do you want?" He growled, repeating his arrogant declaration from earlier, "I already told you I'll make you pee your pants every time you see me." While Misu was in danger, the atmosphere at school remained calm. Students were chatting while Kang Yu-sung sat calmly taking notes at his desk. The teacher's voice rang out clearly, asking the class to keep quiet and sit down as the lesson began. "Is everyone seated?" With a cheerful expression, the teacher entered the room to announce that Do Chang-soo, the one who once terrified everyone at the Reform Center, had officially returned. The teacher hoped the class would help him reintegrate, believing he had reflected deeply on his actions. The students below whispered, "We're in trouble now." They knew reform school was nothing to a guy like Chang-soo, as he was released in just 4 weeks. Do Chang-soo, the leader of a juvenile delinquent gang, who used to be unstoppable, had returned. But the truth shocked everyone. Instead of a powerful boss, Do Chang-soo was now a cripple in a wheelchair. His face, blank, with his mouth hanging open pathetically. His glorious past was gone, leaving behind a soulless shell that just laughed mindlessly. The disgust peaked. When a scream rang out, "He peed himself!" Chang-soo lost control and relieved himself right there in front of everyone. The class erupted in horror and disgust. Teacher Chang-soo peed his pants. His mother hurriedly took her pitiful son outside amidst whispers about the deranged state of the man who was once the definition of terror. Everything stemmed from the fact that the special juvenile reform law had officially been implemented. The Juvenile Protection Act that once caused so much controversy had been completely abolished, replaced by stricter regulations. Their cruelty only ends when they pay the price with their lives. Now juvenile offenders are sent to facilities managed by the military to be reformed through forced detention. The education period lasts until they are assessed as having completely changed, much like the tragic end of Do Chang-soo. Back to reality, the scene at Penguin Orphanage was becoming chaotic, with police sirens and shouting, "Stop, stay back, back away, right now." Police cordoned off the scene in the dark alley. The surrounding residents whispered about a serious incident, and there were even rumors that someone had died. At the same time, the car carrying Yu-sung was stuck in traffic. Hearing the driver complain about potentially being late for tutoring Yu-sung, suddenly realized this was the area of the orphanage where he used to live. With an ominous premonition, he abruptly opened the door and bolted out, despite the driver's attempts to stop him. Yu-sung's eyes were filled with extreme anxiety as he looked toward the crime scene. In the dim light, a broken orphanage watch from Penguin Orphanage lay shattered on the IUC ground. He was shaken, whispering to himself, "Don't tell me." The whispers of the crowd around him felt like knives stabbing his heart. "A murderer. I heard the culprit is a child from the orphanage. An orphan. That's terrifying." A heavily injured body covered by a white sheet lay cold on the road. Yu-sung frantically pushed through the crowd, screaming in despair when he thought of his younger brother. My little brother now." Yu-sung went numb, staring at the scene before him. According to Article 243 of the Act, on special cases for juvenile reform, the police announced the arrest of the suspect right at the scene. It was Min-soo, the boy standing with his head bowed, his hands tightly cuffed behind his back. His clothes were covered in blood. Min-soo's face was listless, his eyes hollow with wounds on his face. From this moment on, all personal information about this teenager would be under the control of the Military Reform Center. At the 303rd trial session of the Juvenile Reform Center, a heavy slam on the table echoed, shattering the suffocating atmosphere. The judge, with a stern face, barked out, full of fury, Beyond reform. Standing before the bar with his hands cuffed, Min-soo slumped his head listening to the harsh accusations. Lee, Min-soo, you show absolutely no signs of remorse. Don't forget you are here for murder charges. Gone was his usual arrogance. He only knew how to weakly protest in despair. I didn't kill anyone, I have said it over and over again. Why won't you listen to me? Responding to that plea was only the judge's contempt. Always lying. The judge held up an evidence bag containing a blood-stained brick and questioned, "So how do you explain the fingerprints and the blood on this brick?" The judge's patience seemed to have reached its limit as he listed a series of the boy's past offenses. "And all those crimes you committed, you mean to tell me you didn't do those either?" He believed Min-soo was just like any other criminal, always finding ways to blame family circumstances or the situation to turn himself into a victim. The whispers in the gallery grew louder. The judge seems genuinely angry. The judge continued to berate the lack of remorse in these misguided children. Kill at the drop of a hat. At this rate the world will turn into, hell. So now you need to learn a lesson. He delivered a sarcastic lecture. If someone bothers you, tell an adult for help. Ultimately, the reason you committed those crimes is because you don't trust adults. Immediately after the sentence was officially declared. According to Article 28 of the Reform and Rehabilitation Law, he was sentenced to detention at the Youth Reform Center. Min-soo trudged onto the prisoner transport bus, heading toward a remote, desolate place. The teenagers on the bus began to stir and complain. "Haha, man, this center is so far. When are we getting there? What is this, North Korea? Everywhere I look, it's just mountains and more mountains." Meanwhile, another guy asked crudely, "Hey, I need to use the bathroom. Is there a rest stop? Hey man, sing something for us to hear." A brat on the bus started teasing the police officer in charge of the transport. The officer could only force a smile and pat the air. "Come on, kids. Try to sit still for a while longer." The juvenile delinquents began to lose patience. One kid even screamed because he couldn't hold his urge anymore. But the noise was quickly stifled when a majestic archway appeared before them, leading to an isolated area. The police officer coldly reminded them, "Wait until you get in there, and you'll have all the time you want to perform. Don't worry about lacking time." The bus rolled deep into the remote mountains where a massive cold structure named the Youth Reform Center waited. The kids started to get worried when they saw how wretched the place looked. They couldn't believe they would have to sleep there. Suddenly, a cheer rang out, shattering the gloomy atmosphere. "Hey, look, girls!" Outside the fence, a group of female prisoners was forced to do hard labor with sickles in their hands. The teenagers on the bus went crazy. They pressed their faces against the glass, making crude jokes and sniffing the air in a perverted way. Their excitement was cut short when the police officer spoke up. "Shut it. That side is restricted land. Don't even dream about it." The heavy iron gate slammed, shut officially, locking everyone into a world with no escape. As soon as they stepped off the bus, the teenagers showed their unruly nature, constantly complaining about back pain and demanding things as absurd as a gaming room. One guy even had the nerve to block the guard to demand a cigarette. When refused on the grounds that minors weren't allowed to smoke, he instantly turned aggressive, stepping up to the officer and threatening, "Hey guard, you want a punch, is that it? One punch or two or three or four?" While the tension was at its breaking point, a strange sound suddenly rang out. Min-soo looked around, bewildered, only to be horrified to see a group of men with bulging muscles, shaved heads, and wearing collars like animals, running while making grunting sounds, then darting past them in terror. Witnessing these hulking guys running and grunting like pigs, the rookies couldn't help but burst into mocking laughter. They pointed and jeered. What a bunch of lunatics! What kind of training is this grunting like that? However, the laughter suddenly froze when a high-ranking officer shouted for everyone to stand at attention. Heavy footsteps approached, making the crowd start to feel uneasy, not knowing what was happening. As soon as the command "platoon" was shouted, the muscular men jogging instantly stopped standing in a straight line with robotic precision. On their chests were tattooed strange symbols, and they wore iron collars like livestock. At the jailer's command, the entire platoon shouted in unison, a bizarre grunting sound used as a respectful greeting. The sight of dozens of hulking men having to obey blindly left the newly arrived teenagers stunned. A man with a powerful appearance and piercing eyes stepped out. That was the head of this place. Seeing this, the unruly teenagers still didn't know fear. They continued to make sarcastic remarks, claiming this military stunt was really boring and annoying. The jailer didn't get angry. He just smirked a wicked smile and then coldly ordered everyone to bow. The rookies still innocently chuckled, daring to see what that old man was up to. But in just a split second, the absolute authority of this place was established. The entire platoon of old prisoners simultaneously prostrated themselves flat on the ground, creating a terrifying scene of submission. The teenagers began to feel insecure. "Don't worry, we still have children's rights. What's there to be afraid of?" The jailer pointed straight at them, barking, "Today, and we have a new batch of vermin looking for death. You have 10 minutes to turn those vermin into pets." The jailer ordered coldly. Immediately, the hulking prisoners responded in unison with bizarre, inhuman cries. A rookie furiously shouted, insulting the jailer as a cowardly old man and threatening to snap his neck. Boasting is the fastest way to die. However, before the challenge even finished, a powerful hand punched him straight in the face with tremendous force. Witnessing that scene, Min-soo could only stand frozen in place in total shock. The nightmare truly began when those beasts in human skin lunged forward ferociously, attacking the arrogant fools who only moments ago were full of themselves but were now just screaming in utter despair. Pleading for the monsters to stay back, one fellow prisoner was kicked away. The sound of the impact and the pathetic cries echoed across the camp yard. The warden stood there, a triumphant smile on his face, declaring that, from now on out, none of them were human anymore, just loyal slaves. When he allowed them to speak like humans, the veteran prisoners prostrated themselves in unison, shrieking their thanks and absolute submission. Amidst the terror of the newcomers and the chaos, Min-soo chose to lie still, playing dead on the ground, hoping to escape the gaze of these demons. While lying there observing, Min-soo realized the situation was becoming worse than ever, as the new recruits were hunted like prey. One poor teenager ran toward the security guards, desperately begging for help, but responding to that plea was a young officer with a grin stretching ear to ear. Eerily, he waved his hand and sarcastically warned them not to come any closer. Min-soo instinctively realized something was off, because if he wanted to help, he would have acted long ago, right when the boy, that teenager, just reached him. He swung his arm in a powerful strike, knocking the victim down instantly, accompanied by a crazed roar. "I told you not to come over," the officer. While screaming, he swung his baton wildly at the new recruits, his eyes bulging with rage. "Whoever is stubborn gets a taste of the baton." The sound of the baton clashing rang out, mingled with the pathetic pleas of those beaten to the ground. "I'm sorry, Hicks, don't hit me anymore. I'm sorry." Lying still and observing, Min-soo silently concluded that this was actually a calculated intimidation tactic for survival. He noticed they controlled their strength very precisely. The movements were exaggerated, but not aimed at vital points. Min-soo told himself this wasn't violence meant to kill. That made sense. Most people don't want to be murderers, and he was the same. But Min-soo's quick thinking had caught the eye of a powerful officer. He leaned close to Minsu's face, smirking meaningfully. "Oh kid, that was quite the performance." When Minsu stuttered to apologize, he casually cut him off and suddenly stomped hard on his head. He growled a threat. "I like clever little rats like you. All right, from now on, you're a rat. You have to work to keep me entertained. Understand?" Under the heavy heel, Minsu could only moan in pain, but was immediately corrected by him. Not a moan, make a squeak sound instead. "Yes, Warden." All the new recruits had finished stripping. The officers loudly reported when, standing before a long line of teenagers trembling in a semi-nude state. The new recruits stood frozen in place, their faces dazed and humiliated witnessing the sight. At that scene, the warden wore a cruel smile, revealing his white teeth. He coldly declared, "All right, from now on, the assessment begins." Meanwhile, at a quiet apartment complex at 2 in the afternoon, a man in a sharp suit appeared silently in front of an apartment. He rang the doorbell and called out softly, "Hello, is anyone there?" After confirming there was no answer, he calmly turned the doorknob and told himself this was the perfect time for someone to go out. Suddenly, he pulled a pair of sharp scissors from his suit pocket. With professional and decisive movements, he used the scissors to cut the seal on the door and broke inside. "Visiting uninvited mind if I come in for a bit." Yusueng stepped into the dark room with cold eyes. Childhood memories suddenly flooded back when he and his younger brother would frequently break into abandoned houses. Back then, Minsu would stand watch outside while he was responsible for stealing valuables inside. They lived like professional thieves for many years, until they were caught by the police and sent to an orphanage. It only took 5 minutes for the two brothers to clear out a house. Yusoeng thought those dark days had ended, but now he was once again breaking into someone else's house. He looked coldly at the person lying on the bed and reassured him, "Don't worry, I didn't come to steal anything. I just want some answers. My brother was also sent in there." The person lying on the bed was none other than Zhou Changsu, but now he was just a hollow shell mouth agape and constantly muttering. Yusueng was shocked, wondering what kind of hellish place that reform center was to turn someone like him into this state. Although reports said he fell from a height and hit his head, Yusueng realized his body showed no signs of trauma or broken bones. He didn't understand what had turned a tough school bully into such a pathetic wreck. Looking at the current Changsu, who could only sob and cry because he had soiled himself, Yusueng completely lost his patience. He brutally grabbed his face, growling in a fit of rage, "You only have 4 weeks, but my brother might never get out. So wake up and answer me." In a state of extreme panic, Changsu began to scream frantically about being electrocuted and desperately pleaded, it hurts, I was wrong, Yusueng." Yusueng felt that questioning Zhou Changsu seemed useless, as he kept screaming in fear of electrocution. But looking closer, he was shocked to discover on his chest he had strange red scars. Meanwhile, at the reform center, the classification process was proceeding cruelly. Letter frames were pressed against the chests of the new recruits, and a type of red paint was sprayed to mark their rank based on the severity of their crimes. A series of teenagers had to kneel in humiliation with bright red symbols branded onto their naked bodies. Sitting on an armchair in the middle of the yard, the warden casually flipped through each child's file. He muttered names like Oh Sang-jin or Park San. All were only classified as C for petty theft or vandalism. He looked disappointed. So boring, just a bunch of petty thieves, not a drop of killer instinct. But his gaze suddenly stopped when he saw a familiar face. He triumphantly confirmed he hadn't seen wrong when he found a truly interesting kid. A streak of red paint began being sprayed onto Minsu's chest. The warden yelled excitedly, "Congratulations, little rat, it's you, Lee Min-soo." Caught off guard, Min-soo tried to speak, but was immediately corrected with a squeaking sound as per the rules. The warden laughed gleefully, confirming, "Min-soo is more violent than he looks," seeing the bright red letter A on his chest. Min-soo was the only A rank in this batch of recruits. Min-soo's face showed clear shock when he heard the warden promise, "Welcome to paradise where you will be well taken care of." His file clearly recorded Lee Min-soo, 18 years old, guilty of murder classified as A rank. At Eonji Girls' High School, the appearance of a stranger was making the girls buzz with excitement. One girl hurriedly urged her friend to stop eating and look to the other side of the road. There a boy with an intellectual look was leaning against his bicycle, intently reading a rainbow book. His handsome romantic appearance made the girls unable to help but exclaim, "So insanely handsome." Seeing their chance, the two girls excitedly approached to strike up a conversation, pretending they had met before just to get to know him. They didn't hesitate to express their desire to be friends right away. A girl even mistakes him for an idle trainee and asks for his social media handle. Yu Seong gently adjusts his glasses. "I'm a fossil, I only use carrier pigeons. Just delivering messages." This reply only makes the schoolgirls even more excited. They think a guy who doesn't use social media is honestly super cool and adorable. Seizing the moment, Yu Seong cuts straight to the point. "I have something to ask you guys. Is that okay? I'm looking for someone. Someone named Ga Se-min." As soon as that name is mentioned, the faces of the two girls change instantly. One points in the other direction. "Se-min, why mention that monster? It brings bad luck all day." Just then a girl with long messy black hair wearing a loose shirt and holding a motorcycle helmet appears. She nonchalantly blows a bubble with her gum, looking totally indifferent. The surrounding students start whispering about how she just returned from a juvenile detention center, warning each other that she's extremely dangerous. Despite the warnings, Yu Seong stands his ground, his eyes not leaving the target. The two girls with Yu Seong start to panic, terrified of being caught in the crossfire. Without a moment of hesitation, Yu Seong walks straight up to that prickly girl. Ga Se-min speaks coldly. "What is it?" Yu Seong looks her straight in the eyes and asks in a firm voice, "I want to know about the detention center." But Ga Se-min couldn't care less. She just mutters, "Get lost," and casually brushes past his shoulder. Yu Seong stands there, stunned, softly whispering, "My younger brother is there." Watching Ga Se-min's back fade away, he sighs, blaming himself for being too blunt, and decides to find another way to approach her next time. But suddenly a motorcycle helmet flies straight at him. Snatching the helmet quickly, Yu Seong stares blankly at Se-min, who is already settled on a bright red high-displacement motorcycle. She coldly commands, "Get on fast, or are you just going to stand there and be a model for those schoolgirls to stare at?" The engine roars and echoes loudly as they blast down the long, empty boulevard. Yu Seong wonders why she suddenly changed her mind, but the only reason he's risking everything is, "My little brother is locked up there too." The wind lashes against the visor as Yu Seong asks impatiently, "What exactly is the juvenile detention center like?" After a haunting silence, Se-min drops two chilling words, "Hell. Back in that living hell." The warden roars with excitement before a long line of exhausted prisoners. "It's only been 3 hours." He continues to order the next exercise, leaving Min-soo to just grit his teeth and endure. Drenched in sweat, in utter exhaustion, he desperately wonders when this torture will ever end. "Start jumping!" The warden's scream forces Min-soo to shriek, "Squeak, squeak," to match his status as a rat. In the scorching campyard, Min-soo and his fellow prisoners have to jump continuously. Their mouths never stop shouting "oink," and the miserable squeak sounds echo non-stop. Damn it, it's been 3 hours. When will this end? Min-soo gritted his teeth, sweating profusely after hours of continuous abuse. High above, the warden hums contentedly, enjoying the sounds of the pets he finds so sweet. Suddenly, a prisoner collapses from exhaustion. Instead of help, he is kicked straight by a guard who bellows, "Get up, don't be lazy." Someone left the line, so everyone starts over. The poor wretch can only sob and beg to use the restroom because his stomach pain has exceeded his limit. The guards jump in to beat the weakling, mocking him. "You were such a tough guy when you arrived. How can you only take this much?" Just then, the warden suddenly speaks up, stopping them, claiming that hitting someone just because they need the restroom is too harsh. He kindly helps the beaten prisoner up, comforting him, saying that he must have been holding it in for a long time before daring to ask. The warden approaches and calmly asks the crowd, "Anyone else need to go to the bathroom?" This sudden question makes Min-soo suspicious. Immediately, a chorus of me too" erupts from the exhausted prisoners. Min-soo wonders if this is a trap to separate them and beat them up. The guard roars, ordering everyone to line up in a single file, and no human speech is allowed. The warden continues to lure them, promising, "If you don't go now, hold it until tonight." Watching his fellow prisoners excitedly lining up, Min-soo feels this is extremely suspicious. He thinks to himself, with this miserable, pathetic system, could they really be so lenient as to let everyone pretend to have a stomachache just to rest? The warden keeps coaxing them. This is a rare opportunity to get in line. Min-soo watches the hungry looks all around him and warns himself, unconditional kindness is like an unknown fruit in the jungle. The more attractive and delicious it looks, the more careful you must be when approaching it. Deciding to test his luck, he raises his hand and lets out a squeak to join the line. But as soon as the guard approaches, Min-soo suddenly changes his attitude. He yells in human speech that he no longer needs the restroom and will return to training immediately. The officer is furious. He grabs Min-soo tightly and roars with anger. "Are you messing with me? Do we look like we're playing around?" Min-soo explains painfully that due to excessive muscle use, his stomach suddenly acted up, but he only receives cruel threats in return. "Stomach hurt, huh? Let me help you clear your bowels." He can only tremble and beg in desperation. "I'm sorry." The guard roughly throws Min-soo back into line and barks, "Back in line, you rat, I'll be watching you." He falls down humiliated amidst the jeers of the surrounding prisoners. "What is that idiot doing? Ha 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 ha." He wipes his sweat, realizing the anomaly. They treat them like animals, but then let them take a restroom break. Only humans need bathrooms. This is definitely a trap. The officer gathers those who want to go to the bathroom in one spot and loudly announces, "All those who need to go to the bathroom are right here." The warden, with a sinister smile, approaches and nonchalantly grants a favor. Of course, humans or beasts both need to relieve themselves. Looking like that, it must be difficult. Granting you 30 minutes. Hurry up before you miss your turn. The group that remained watches with jealousy, secretly regretting not joining quickly to rest. The remaining clever ones start to mock the idiots who went to the bathroom, but their smiles instantly vanish when the warden points at them and roars, "What are you laughing at, as long as you aren't them?" The remaining teenagers freeze in total terror when they realize they are the actual targets. The warden stands high above and coldly declares a new grotesque punishment. "From now on, you will become a human centipede." Immediately, they are forced into a humiliating position, with one person putting their feet on the shoulders of the person in front, crawling straight into the person's rear, forming a long line like a centipede. The guard's shouting rings out, ordering everyone to keep their arms straight. Hold your positions. If anyone drops, the whole group starts over. Misu bitterly realized that they were now treated worse than mere insects. The true nightmare began when the guard roared with humiliation. "Damn it, you lot are worse than farm pigs. You're low-life scum who can't even control your own basic bodily functions." He maniacally forced those suffering from stomach cramps to do it right there in the killing position. For things like you, using a toilet is a luxury, you useless bugs. The warden laughed heartily at the inmates' suffering. He stomped and prodded them in a perverted way. "Mobile toilets, hurry up and go." A young boy collapsed, sobbing in sheer humiliation as every last shred of human dignity was trampled upon. "What are you staring at with those dead eyes, huh?" The shouting erupted amidst a series of kicks rained down on the exhausted youths. Only 3 hours had passed, but the arrogance of the wild beasts when they first arrived had completely vanished. Instead, they were blasted with high-pressure hoses to be scrubbed clean like actual pets, while those lucky enough not to be punished learned a fundamental truth in this place. The warden's word is the law. The loudspeaker boomed across the facility, signaling a break. "Good cleanup and get inside. Time to serve the buffet for the pets." Immediately, the guards shouted in unison, "Yes, sir." Then they escorted the inmates toward the correctional center's cafeteria. Holding his food tray, Misu couldn't help but be horrified when he saw the pathetic portion of only plain rice and a bit of meager soup. He bitterly thought to himself, "There's nothing to even eat." The humiliation peaked when he realized everyone had to sit directly on the cold floor to eat. Misu bitterly wondered why they didn't even have a basic set of utensils. Could it be because in the eyes of those here, they are nothing more than pets? Just then, an officer stood in front and roared, signaling everyone to join in the gratitude song. The veteran prisoners began to shriek monstrous lyrics. "We are not human. We are dogs. We are pigs. We eat what we are given. We do what we are told." They screamed frantically, giving thanks for being cursed at and beaten. Misu stood frozen in utter disgust. He realized the horrific inhumanity currently unfolding right before his eyes. On the wall, the gratitude song was framed solemnly with lyrics confirming they don't bark, don't bite, and only know how to follow orders, a collection of the most obedient pigs on the planet. Misu's gaze turned icy cold as he saw the truth that they were being treated as pets. He gritted his teeth, his hand gripping his rice ball tightly, telling himself that even if he is a pet, or anything else for that matter, he must survive this hell. As Misu shoved the rice balls into his mouth, he silently promised himself that he would endure everything. His eyes burned with an iron will determined to overcome every humiliation so he could escape this hellhole at any cost. Meanwhile, on a high cliff overlooking the valley, Yu Seong stood silently looking toward the correctional center as the teenager was slowly swallowed by the sunset. Gasemin sat dangling her legs on the railing, her eyes looking far off toward the prison. She admitted that she comes here every day because she can't stop worrying about her younger brother, who is awaiting trial, the one who will probably soon have to step foot in that place. When Yu Seong asked if that place is truly hell, Semin coldly replied that hell might actually be better because that place was never meant for humans. The horrific memories caused her to have nightmares every night, and she had to take sleeping pills just to doze off. Seeing Yu Seong's resolve, she understood how worried he was for his brother. Yu Seong bitterly revealed that it was the final wish of his late mother. She had asked him to protect his younger brother, but in the end, he couldn't do it. That is why Yu Seong sought out Semin, hoping she could do something before it was too late, because among the few who escaped that place, she was the only one who seemed stable. Semin suddenly asked if he wanted to know the secret to how she survived those days at the correctional center. Yuxiang hurriedly pressed her for ways to leave that place in one piece, but Semin's answer left him stunned. She made a distorted face, stuck her tongue out weirdly, and asserted, "Wanna survive? Just act like an idiot like this. Guaranteed you'll live just fine." Seeing Yuxiang still skeptical, she emphasized that she was telling the truth. Yuxiang suddenly became angry. He growled that he wasn't joking and demanded she be serious and tell the truth. Semin just stayed silent. She turned her back to him and whispered that she wasn't joking. Her hand slowly moved to her head, brushing her thick hair to one side. Yuxiang was shocked to the point of silence as he witnessed the horrific truth hidden underneath. On Semin's scalp were bulging, tangled, and deformed scars. She explained that even a minor outbreak was enough for them to be ready to attack each other without hesitation. That place was full of madmen, so much so that she never thought she would have to witness horrific scenes like people being brutally tortured with hot oil. Seeing Yuxiang bow his head to apologize for what she had to go through, Semin brushed it aside and told him there was no need to say more. She admitted that she was released early only by pretending to be slow, a trick that seemed simple but was the key to survival. However, she also warned him that this method probably wouldn't help much with his brother's situation. Seeing Yuxiang still wearing a sad expression, she playfully nudged him, demanding him to drop that pitiful look if he didn't want to get kicked by her. Yuxiang laughed softly in response, then asked her to move her foot. He turned to ask about the strange marks he had seen. Semin explained that after the initiation ceremony for both male and female students at the center, prisoners would be washed, issued a uniform, and given a meal. However, to prevent any thoughts of escaping, everyone is required to wear a GPS tracking collar. In the detention area, Misu clumsily put on the baggy clothes, his hand unconsciously touching the black collar. That was tightening around his neck, unaware of its true function. "Don't you go zoning out. Keep the line straight." The guard's shout cut off Misu's train of thought. He trudged along in the formation, his mouth still forced to chant the humiliating oink oink pig sounds. Semin explained that after receiving their gear, prisoners would be taken to their assigned rooms. This classification is based entirely on the severity of their crimes. For example, Room E is for basic assault, Room D for drug trafficking, and Room C is for thieves and con artists, with a serious assault charge Semin used to be shoved into Room B. The heavy iron door opened, revealing a dark and oppressive space. Semin emphasized that Room A is where the most dangerous criminals are held, those convicted of murder or the like. Walking inside with his food tray in hand, Misu stood rooted to the spot at the presence of fellow inmates with deformed and terrifying appearances. Sweat poured down like rain as he realized he had just walked into a tiger's den where cold-blooded murderers were gathered, just like the crime he was being charged with. His eyes were glued to a group of inmates sitting waiting, among them Sejun with long hair covering half his face, sitting silently in the corner of the room. The others, some were picking their noses, some were cracking their knuckles, defiantly created an invisible pressure that made Misu's sweat start. "So quiet," Minsu whispered to himself. "Is this a confrontation? I absolutely cannot back down." The silence shattered when the guy with the scarred, uneven head roared, "So aggressive, you little bastard. Don't you know how to introduce yourself?" The guy next to him chimed in, cracking his knuckles. "Where are you from? What brought you here?" Minsu remained calm. He replied, "I'm from the Penguin Orphanage, and I used to attend Seonggrak High School." As soon as he finished, the other inmates burst into mocking laughter. "Look at that, an orphan turned convict. Quite the career path, huh?" As the crowd grew rowdy, Sejun suddenly spoke up, cutting them off. "Shut it. The leader stared straight at Minsu. His eyes were sharp as knives. He asked coldly, "What are you in for?" "If you're in room A, you must have done something serious." Minsu looked at the leader and replied flatly, "Murder." The moment that word left his lips, the air in the room froze. The guys who were just laughing were now staring with wide, terrified eyes. Finally, a real killer was actually here. He's probably just bragging to look tough. Seeing his cellmate's overreaction, Minsu hung his head and wondered why he lied about something that would come out eventually. But wait, could it be? Am I the only murderer in this place? Minsu looked around the cell, wondering if the severity of one's crime truly determined power in this place. If murder was the worst crime, he should have been the most formidable person here. But the reality was the exact opposite. A short-haired inmate turned to laugh at the guy serving as a footrest for Sejun. Guess who's stuck being the new errand boy? It was a guy with white hair named Poppy. Minsu froze when he realized the person being trampled underfoot was actually the youngest, the lowest-ranking person in the room. Sejun suddenly stood up, causing Poppy to frantically apologize. Immediately, a brutal kick slammed into the guy with white hair for the sin of speaking like a human. "You're doing it again. You dare talk like a human. Damn it!" Poor Poppy could only let out pathetic, squeaky whimpers to beg for mercy. Minsu realized with bitterness that inside or out the weak always get bullied. If they want to see him as a murderer, he would accept that cruel persona to survive. 7 p.m. Time for reflection reports. According to regulations, every youth at the reformatory must write 10 reflection reports every day. Minsu sat blankly in front of the white page. His hand gripped the pencil helpless. He cursed to himself, "Damn it, I haven't even killed anyone. What am I supposed to write?" While he struggled with his messy thoughts, a ball of paper suddenly flew over and hit his desk. Behind him, other inmates were rowdily playing baseball with wads of paper and homemade bats. They argued loudly about fouls or home runs, completely ignoring study time. Minsu, annoyed, told them to be quiet and asked if they didn't have to write their reports. The delinquents burst into mocking laughter, saying, "Why bother with that trash?" One guy gestured toward Poppy, who was hunched over writing amid a mountain of paper. "Poppy is our national secretary in this room." Suddenly Poppy stood up among the papers, annoying the inmates. "What is it, Poppy? Why are you standing up before you're done?" He could only let out bark-like noises, full of humiliation, instead of speaking because he was forced to act like a human to explain. Poppy whispered a request to go to the bathroom, but was immediately scolded for daring to forget his status as a sewer rat. The leaders sneered, letting him go take care of business. Minsu watched silently, bitterly, realizing that in this place, human rights are a luxury. Only the guards treat the inmates like mere animals. In corners without any supervision, the law of the jungle ruled absolutely. Even while going to the bathroom, Poppy was attacked viciously. "How dare you squat like a human?" A heavy kick knocked him down, leaving him groaning in extreme pain. Here the weak are the prey, and there is absolutely no one to protect them. To exist, you are forced to become strong, or at least pretend to be. The humiliation reached its peak when Poppy was forced to go to the bathroom the way a real dog would. The inmates stood outside laughing their heads off, enjoying this disgusting spectacle and treating it as cheap entertainment. 8 p.m. shower time begins. In the cramped high-pressure space, everyone has exactly 3 minutes to scrub their body with a tiny sliver of soap that has passed through who knows how many hands. Minsu worried he would catch a disease from sharing toiletries with 50 other people in these squalid conditions. 9 p.m. roll call before bedtime officially begins under the strict supervision of the guards. The clear shouting of the inmates rang out in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But when it was his turn, instead of calling the next number, Poppy suddenly let out a loud woof, breaking the rules during roll call like that. Minsu's eyes widened in shock at Poppy's impulsive action. Immediately, the cold-hearted officer smashed the roll call notebook into his face. Poppy fell to the ground, only able to let out pathetic, painful whimpers. After finishing the final roll call at exactly 10 p.m., all the lights in the detention center went out. The whole room plunged into darkness. Everyone lay squeezed together on the narrow mats to close out a long, horrifying day. In the quiet space, Poppy's sobbing rang out again. He painfully whispered, "Mom, I want to go home. It's just animals here." A grumpy voice suddenly roared, breaking the atmosphere. "Which one of you is crying like a human?" Poppy hurriedly covered his mouth tight, suppressing his sobs to avoid further punishment. The first night at the reformatory had passed so heavily. At exactly 5:30 in the morning, everyone was forced up to start cleaning and morning roll call. The teenagers busily folded blankets and wiped the floor like machines. A new day in this hellhole always started very early when everyone's emotions had become hardened. By 6 a.m., the sound of a rattling cart rang out along with the staff shouting for mealtime in the cells. Foods here, the meager meal trays were pushed through a small gap under the door into the cell. While eating the dry rice balls, Minsu wondered why they weren't eating in the cafeteria. A fellow inmate explained that because there was an outdoor training session in the afternoon, they all had to eat right in the room. He looked at the rice tray and clicked his tongue. Being given a spoon suddenly makes me feel so fancy. While Misu was halfway through his meal, he noticed something odd and asked, "Where's Poppy? Why isn't he eating?" His fellow inmates casually pointed down at their feet. Misu was horrified to see Poppy crawling on the floor, carrying a wooden board on his back to serve as a dining table for the others. A bully roared when he saw the soup bowl tilt. "Damn it, the soup spilled. Are you not paying attention?" Poppy could only whimper and let out pathetic dog-like yelps to apologize, seeing the worried look on Misu's face. They laughed boisterously, asking why he was worried, claiming they treated Poppy like a friend, and that nowhere else would you find friends who prepare meals for you like this. Misu was suspicious of the meal. Made with love, they claimed. Immediately, one of them dumped all the leftovers and scraps onto a plate and mixed it all together. He smugly announced, "The premium garbage special is served." He invited them to eat. Misu froze, unable to believe the cruelty of these monsters. The bullies continued to mock, saying this was the perfect meal because there wouldn't be any leftovers. Then asked, "Poppy, looking at this dish, aren't you drooling?" Poppy trembled as he looked at the filthy mess, sweat pouring off him like rain. Seeing him hesitate, the leader shouted, "Poppy, why aren't you eating?" In utter terror, Poppy hung his head and began to lick up that garbage right off the floor. Unable to take it anymore, Misu spoke up coldly, "Hey, don't eat that." He decisively delivered a powerful kick, knocking the board off Poppy's back, sending the tray and the food flying across the room. This sudden action made all the inmates' expressions change instantly. They roared in anger. Misu looked straight at Poppy and pressed, "You're just a kid, aren't you?" The poor teenager with the name tag Moon Hyunjun looked up at Misu with fearful eyes amidst the chaos. Just then, Sejun suddenly spoke up. "Hey, murderer," he growled, asserting that this place had its own hierarchy and rules. If Misu was the newcomer, he was obligated to follow them. Sejun stared at Misu with sharp eyes and concluded, "If you don't accept it, come here and defeat me." To follow up, Sejun coldly declared that to do that, Misu first had to defeat Poppy since he currently held a higher rank. He added a menacing remark that if Misu lost, He would have to take his place and become the new Poppy of this room. Misu sighed in frustration. He felt this hierarchy game was truly childish and ridiculous. He thought with contempt that even though they were here because they caused trouble, these people still couldn't shed their pathetic, thuggish nature. Suddenly, Moon Hyun-jun lunged, attacking Misu repeatedly with a flurry of punches. Watching the scene, the surrounding inmates screamed and cheered excitedly. "Punch him! Being the youngest is boring anyway." They laughed gleefully, surprised that a kid who looked so weak could be this tough. Jeers and taunts rang out, challenging the murderer Misu to fight back if he didn't want to be trampled to the very bottom of the social ladder. Misu gritted his teeth, enduring the blows. He realized an ironic truth: Poppy was punching him while sobbing and apologizing over and over. He asked himself helplessly, how could he fight back against someone who was crying while hitting him? The story shifts briefly to a peaceful scene at the Penguin Orphanage. Inside the familiar room, the headmistress was kindly asking Yoo-seong about his preparations for enlisting in the army tomorrow. Yoo-seong sat quietly on the floor, clutching his penguin pillow, confirming he was all set, as those were the only priceless mementos of the two brothers. The headmistress smiled, recalling the past, and said they were a troublemaking duo around the neighborhood. She specifically mentioned Yoo-seong, who used to terrify the local kids to the point they wouldn't dare come near, because he would frequently beat them to a pulp. Yoo-seong just chuckled lightly and asked back, "Did I really do that?" Then his eyes suddenly turned sharp and dangerous. He smirked at the headmistress and stated that perhaps she had misunderstood something. "It's true, I used to fight those kids, but I really wasn't the one they feared the most." Back in the cell, Moon Hyun-jun was crying while frantically raining blows on Misu. I'm sorry, but I don't want to be the puppy anymore." Misu just shielded his head, enduring it in helplessness. Watching the scene, the scarred inmate laughed with contempt. He claimed Misu's reputation as a murderer was all bark and no bite, calling him weak. He roughly grabbed him, hurling insults about him being abandoned by his parents, and declared Misu was the new puppy trash of this room. However, Yoo-seong knew one truth: the one the kids back then truly feared wasn't him. That person was his younger brother, Min-soo. As soon as his rage reached its limit, Min-soo suddenly unleashed a lightning-fast uppercut, sending the scarred guy flying backward. Yoo-seong admitted he might be better at fighting, but when Min-soo loses control, everything becomes extremely ugly. The lightning strike left Moon Hyun-jun and the other inmates frozen in terror. Even Sejun's expression shifted, his eyes showing caution toward the explosive strength of the one he had just belittled. Misu stood tall in the middle of the room, radiating a cold, murderous aura. That was bone-chilling. Yoo-seong bitterly realized that once his younger brother truly snapped, absolutely no one could stop him anymore. Misu lunged to attack. "Crazy Poppy, all of you will end up as poppies." The powerful punch caught his opponent off guard. He glared with killing intent. "I said I would turn you all into that." However, Misu couldn't take on the whole room alone. He was knocked back to the floor. The inmates jeered, "Damn, what a mess!" They surrounded him, mocking, "Turn us into poppies. Are you crazy?" Another one added, "You've only got one life and you think you can be the boss of the room." The thugs continued to hurl insults, saying this place didn't lack people who liked to act tough. "Do we look like a joke to you?" One stepped closer, insulting Misu as an abandoned orphan. Hitting a sore spot, Misu roared, "Shut your mouth!" He frantically lunged forward and shoved the toilet brush into the mouth of the guy who just insulted him. "You dare touch my mom! Eat this brush!" The situation became more chaotic than ever as the rest of the mob swarmed in. This brat shoved the toilet brush in his mouth for me. But then they suddenly stopped, not daring to advance even an inch. Misu's eyes had become empty and terrifying. In his hand he gripped the toilet brush, with the handle broken off, making it sharp. He growled, "Kill me. Have you ever actually killed anyone before?" The scene shifted elsewhere. A man with a scarred face and fierce eyes roared decisively, "I will abolish the juvenile law. If words don't work, then force must be used." He stared intensely at a golf ball. As if staring down an enemy, he swung his club with a powerful crushing blow to vent his rage on some nameless target. For daring to take his spot, the lackeys standing around clapped in unison, cheering endlessly. What a beautiful swing, Senator! Such a decisive strike! Yet deep in his heart, he was seething secretly, wishing he could take down his rival Han Mansu just as easily. Turning to Kang Yuseong, who was kneeling on the ground, the senator coldly spoke up. "Anyway, why are you standing there?" Yuseong remained in his kneeling position, speaking clearly to present his intentions. "I'm thinking of enlisting early. Resolving the juvenile issues now would surely be beneficial for your political career, father." Hearing this, the senator tightened his gloves, sneering with sarcasm at the fake display of filial piety. He exposed him. "You don't study medicine. Instead, you're playing private investigator at night." The senator swung his club again with terrifying force, growling, "Watch your tone. Kang Yuseong, isn't all of this actually just for your little brother?" The senator coldly asserted that even if Yuseong enlisted right now, there was no guarantee he would be assigned to that specific juvenile detention center to see his brother. Yuseong bowed his head, pleading desperately, "I understand that. That is why I am begging for your help, father. If anyone can make that happen, it can only be you, father." But that powerful father just coldly turned his back and walked away, dropping a heartless question. "Why should I clean up the mess your brother made?" Watching the cold, indifferent back of that man, Yuseong's eyes behind his glasses suddenly darkened with deep resentment. He realized bitterly that in the end, this father would never step in to help him again. "It's a two-way street." The senator looked at Yuseong calculatingly and set an unthinkable condition. "Can you help your father become president?" Yuseong froze, stunned, unable to believe his ears, but the powerful father turned away decisively, urging him to begin the journey to put him at the pinnacle of power if he wanted to save his brother. Back in the cell, tension reached its breaking point. "Come on then, bring it on." Min-soo, in a frenzy, his face covered in blood, brandished a broom handle sharp as a blade. But before he could even act, a hulking guy suddenly closed in from behind, pinning him down, tightly catching Min-soo completely off guard. "Take this, you bastard!" A punch landed square on Min-soo's head, while the guy behind kept him restrained. The other inmates started to panic, seeing Min-soo lying motionless. They trembled, wondering, did he really kill him? If we kill someone here, we're finished. But suddenly, Min-soo snapped back to life, with eyes cold as ice. Capitalizing on an opening, Min-soo delivered a vicious kick straight into the big guy's groin, dropping him instantly amidst his agonizing scream. Just then, Se-jun casually stepped forward, looking down at Min-soo, and let out a biting, malicious remark. "Is your trigger, mother? Or is it the fact that you were abandoned that makes you go this crazy?" Se-jun continued to rub salt into Min-soo's wounds with a mocking tone. "It's truly heartbreaking. Does your mother know that the child she abandoned has become a cold-blooded murderer?" Unable to suppress his rage, Min-soo lunged to attack, but was easily read by Se-jun, who locked his arm, growling a threat. "Sorry about that. Unless you want to lose your eyes." Sejun kept his cold expression, continuing to insult his past. Why? Because your mother abandoned you, or because you committed murder. Suddenly he let go and gestured. Enough! Stop it here, you bastard! While Min-soo was still dazed, Sejun turned around, threw his hands up in surrender, and dumped all the blame on him. It's all his fault, I was just a bystander. Min-soo looked on in shock. What? Who are you talking to? Immediately, the guards stormed into the cell, shouting furiously, You bastard! Do you even know where you are? Every inmate in the room was forced to stand against the wall while the guards confiscated the broom handle from Min-soo and applied physical disciplinary measures on him. They rained blows down on his body relentlessly. You brat! You just got here, and you're already causing trouble. Min-soo could only groan in pain. The officer coldly noted in the report about Min-soo's act of using a weapon to attack fellow inmates. When asked, both Sejun and Moon Hyun-jun echoed in unison. That's right, he made it all up himself. We're completely innocent. Min-soo was dragged away badly injured, branded as a lost cause. 15 days of rest in solitary confinement, plenty of time to contemplate life. Lying. Curled up on the cold floor with his hands tied, Min-soo could only grit his teeth and curse in utter helplessness. Solitary confinement, or what is also known as the punishment room, is where troublemakers are completely isolated for a fixed period. What's scarier is that the days spent locked in here do not count toward the total sentence time. Min-soo thought bitterly, Damn it, I just uselessly extended my jail time. Yet the feeling of being alone in this quiet space actually made him feel quite relieved. Min-soo even wished he had caused trouble sooner to be sent here. This brief peace was broken by the shouting of the guard through the door slot. Lee, Sao, Min-soo, sit up straight. If you're still lying down, you'll be locked up for another day. Instantly, Min-soo was forced into a painful kneeling position. Kneel down, get that look off your face. In this punishment room, inmates are required to maintain a kneeling position until bedtime under the strict surveillance of cameras 24/7. Even the basic right to move one's limbs freely was completely stripped away. A rare consolation was that the bindings would be loosened when the inmate went to the bathroom. But just as he settled onto the toilet, Min-soo realized in horror a critical deficiency. Wait, where's the toilet paper? Hearing the movement, the guard outside snapped, Stop overthinking, hurry up and finish. Min-soo hurriedly explained, That's not the issue. Haru, there's no toilet paper here. He casually instructed, It's behind you. Look back. Min-soo turned around in confusion, but saw no sign of a roll, just a cold faucet, dripping water. The guard's voice echoed again decisively. Use the faucet water to wash up. He looked down at his hands, then shouted in frustration, With my bare hands. The meager meal tray with dried fish and a bit of bland soup was brought in, but for Min-soo, eating now was nothing short of torture. With his hands tied behind his back, he had to hunch over and use his mouth to scavenge at the food like an animal. He shouted in indignation, Damn it! At least untie my hands while I eat. Rage flared with every swallow of the hurried meal. Min-soo grit his teeth, swearing a blood oath, Put your names in my book of grudges, and when I get out, you'll see. At 1900 hours, writing the self-reflection report began. Even while in solitary confinement, Min-soo still could not escape the white pages. He wrote while fuming, I didn't even do anything wrong yet. Now I have to write twice as much just because I was dumped in this punishment room. To kill time and reshape the dynamic, Min-soo started drawing caricatures and analyzing his cellmates in room A from the scarred guy who loves mocking others to the giant meathead who only knows how to eat, and even the spineless Poppy, everyone was depicted with disdainful commentary under his pen. He told himself that everyone here has issues, but the biggest problem was someone else. Min-soo's gaze suddenly turned cold as it rested on Ga Se-jun. I'm drawing you the ugliest out of this whole bunch. Even though he realized the guy was a great fighter, the urge for revenge outweighed any caution. Night fell, and the isolation unit became terrifyingly silent. Min-soo collapsed on the floor, drifting into a fitful sleep, hands still tied tight and a collar digging into his skin. In his hazy state, horrifying memories from the past suddenly came flooding back. The scene showed the two brothers, Yu Seong and Min-soo, as children, standing frozen in their pajamas in the middle of the night. In front of them, a house was being ferociously consumed by flames. The bright red fire illuminated the vacant, haunted expressions on the two children's faces. Suddenly, Min-soo jolted awake in the middle of the night. He sat up, gasping in pain, his eyes wide with terror. A desperate scream echoed throughout the dark room as the ghost of that fire from years ago returned to choke his mind. "Damn it!" Min-soo wheezed. Sweat drenched him as he remained bound, perhaps, because in this harsh environment, those traumatic memories kept surfacing in his dreams. He panted in fear, feeling that if he fell asleep, the nightmare would strike again. In the end, Min-soo had to spend a long, sleepless night in extreme exhaustion. After 16 long days of solitary confinement, the punishment finally ended. Lee Min-soo solitary confinement. Yours is over. Get back to your cell. The moment he stepped back into room A, he had to face the very people who had thrown him into the dungeon. Min-soo gritted his teeth, thinking, damn it. But unexpectedly, his fellow inmates suddenly changed their attitude. They were smiling and acting friendly. Hey, our bad. We went a bit too far. Right. They even insisted that from now on, Moon Hyun-jun wouldn't have to play puppy anymore. Min-soo wondered if things were really resolved that easily. He accepted their apology, but added a cold request. Fine, I accept, but I need an apology from Se-jun too. Immediately, a massive stomp from above unexpectedly crashed down onto Min-soo's head. Looking for me, take this boot to the face and wake up. Before Min-soo could even fight back, the gang immediately swarmed him to pin him down. Grab him, muzzle him. They roughly stuffed a cloth into his mouth, leaving him only able to muffle cries in desperation. Se-jun coldly ordered, drag Min-soo to the bathroom. One guy dragged him while laughing disgustingly. Ha ha ha, that's the underwear I've been wearing for a week. Se-jun sneered, looking down at the pathetic Min-soo on the ground, and mocked him. Little brother, were you looking for me? Too bad someone else wants to see you even more than I do. He introduced the guy who absolutely hated that Min-soo had attacked his sensitive spot during their last encounter. The guy sighed pervertedly. Holding it in all day has been so tough. Min-soo lay on the floor, mouth gagged with a dirty rag able only to emit desperate noises. Just as the situation hung by a thread, a sharp, authoritative voice suddenly rang out, shattering the atmosphere. That's enough. An officer with an imposing appearance had appeared at the cell door. Se-jun nonchalantly glanced at the newcomer and dropped a cocky, sarcastic remark. I guess you're the new guard. Don't worry about us. We're doing this, with permission already. The officer coldly stepped forward and countered, Permission from whom? He firmly declared, I'll deal with you lot in a bit. Then unexpectedly reached out a hand toward Min-soo. Min-soo stared blankly at the hand, offered in front of him. Amidst the suffocating, brutal atmosphere of the prison, the officer softened his voice and whispered something that made him doubt his own ears. Let's go home. Behind the glasses, the officer's face became clear, revealing a radiant, warm smile. Kang Yuseong, the brother he had longed for, was now actually standing there in a police uniform. He gently took his brother's hand and pulled him up from the cold floor. An older brother this cool who can mess with us now. To legally step into the tiger's den and save his brother, Yuseong had to make a calculated deal with his powerful father. In a luxury karaoke room, the congressman was screaming into the microphone with an agitated look, belting out songs about snow-covered battlefields and the call of his comrades. Drenched in sweat, he was so immersed that the atmosphere became incredibly tense and awkward. Witnessing this enthusiastic performance, General Jeffrey, a 4-star general, could not hold back tears of emotion at such patriotic spirit. He didn't stop praising the congressman as a true patriotic soldier, a person who embodied the will of the nation's protectors. Meanwhile, Yuseong sat silently between the two powerful men, inwardly despising the hollow flattery. The congressman was proud that getting his son enlisted by bypassing standard procedures was a luxury privilege. Yuseong looked with contempt at other politicians who often manipulated files and faked mental illnesses to help their children avoid military service. He thought that instead of creating fake hero stories, it was better to throw those immature kids into the army immediately. When the congressman asked if he was mentally prepared to enlist right away, he firmly replied, "Yes, father, I will enlist immediately." With a cold, determined gaze behind his glasses, Yuseong confirmed that he had finished all preparations to save his younger brother. During the time Min-soo awaited trial, Yuseong had constantly delved into the shadows to gather information from those who had experienced the taste of the reformatory, from interrogating Jo Chang-soo to meeting Ga Se-min and the headmistress of the center. It was truly a living hell. That was the reason Yuseong appeared there with iron determination. Standing among the police officers during the solemn salute, he promised himself he would drag his brother out of this hell as soon as possible. Returning to the scene, Yuseong gently reached his hand toward his younger brother and softly said, "Let's go home, Min-soo." He insisted that as long as Min-soo followed what he said, he would soon have his freedom. Yuseong was extremely confident in the perfect plan he had mapped out, believing that everything would go smoothly. But the smile on his lips suddenly froze. Thought it would be easy, but it turned into a disaster. Yuseong's perfect plan had gone up in smoke from the very first steps. Instead of staying calm, Min-soo suddenly launched a powerful punch straight into the face of a big prisoner. Yuseong helplessly looked at his stubborn brother. "I told this guy to be good. Why did he throw a punch?" While Sejun kept a cold expression watching the situation, the other inmates started screaming crazily at Min-soo's reckless act. The younger brother completely lost control and lunged. "Come on, you bastards, I'll kill you all!" The situation turned chaotic as Sejun was surrounded by terrifying inmates. A scarred, disfigured man in the cell glared at him. Looking skeptical, he wondered if Sejun was a prison guard or just a newcomer, because he looked so young. They declared that this room was only meant for 2 people, and they started making threats about the unspoken rules that had to be followed every night. Faced with the encroaching monsters, Yuseong remained calm. "Rules, you mean? We have to fight." He flashed a defiant smirk and delivered the final blow. "Well, maybe I should follow the rules tonight." The inmates laughed greedily at their prey, who had no intention of backing down. Min-soo lunged like a wild beast, roaring with rage. "Come and get it, you bastard!" But Sejun simply tilted his body, dodging the attack with ease. He coldly mocked, "You idiot! Do you think swinging your arms around like that does anything?" With one simple motion, Min-soo lost his balance and crashed to the floor. Sejun stood there looking down with utter contempt. You can't even keep your balance yet you're screaming like a lunatic. Furthermore, Sejun's attention suddenly shifted to Yusong, who was standing tall among the knocked-out inmates and calmly reminded them, "Isn't it better to just follow the rules?" Witnessing the scene, Sejun was inwardly shocked because this prison guard had controlled everything in an instant. He questioned himself, what the hell is this guy doing? He's the type of person I've never met before. Taking advantage of Sejun's distraction, Minsu suddenly delivered a hell of a kick straight to his face and roared, "Who are you looking at while we're fighting, darling?" Minsu laughed triumphantly and provocatively. "Hey, Longhair, your opponent is me. Don't look anywhere else." Sejun bowed his head slightly, a cold bloodlust beginning to radiate. He muttered that he had intended to settle things peacefully and leave, but now everything had changed. Sejun looked up with a threatening glare and declared, "Now you're going to be the poppy." Minsu roared back, "Cut the crap, go be a dog yourself and enjoy it." Immediately, Sejun launched an extremely powerful counterattack that caught Minsu off guard. What's happening? Minsu was stunned to realize he was completely overwhelmed. He groaned in pain internally as he absorbed the lightning-fast blows. This guy, he's ridiculously strong. Sejun looked down coldly and asked a question with hidden meaning. "Do you know why the poppy became the poppy?" Ignoring the threat, Minsu still lunged forward furiously with a roar of rage. "I don't care, you damn bastard! The poppy used to be the room leader here." Sejun coldly revealed the truth about the brutal hierarchy of this place. He threw a thunderous punch that left Minsu dizzy and added, "But just like you, he didn't know his own limits, which is why he ended up in that state." Minsu gritted his teeth, telling himself he couldn't allow himself to be overwhelmed. He frantically grabbed Sejun's collar and screamed, "In this room, you are the most pathetic one, you bastard." Minsu was determined not to let himself be defeated so easily. But in response to that resistance, a giant fist descended from above, a terrifying blow with tremendous force that pinned Minsu to the floor. He lay motionless in the middle of the cell, eyes wide with pain, and could only gasp helplessly, "Damn it!" Lying flat under Sejun's feet, Minsu realized bitterly, how shameful losing right under this guy's feet. The humiliation deepened when he saw the prison guard's shoes approaching. Minsu inwardly tormented himself because every time he got hit, his brother Yusong's face would flicker before his eyes. Yusong leaned down to look at his younger brother, who was lying there gasping for air, and asked, "Are you still alive?" Minsu felt truly terrible. He replied weakly, "Yes." Yusong sighed in annoyance. He firmly hoisted Minsu onto his shoulder and muttered, wondering why he was this light. "Have you not been eating anything here?" Seeing Yusong carrying Minsu away, Sejun asked, "Where are you taking him?" Yusong replied coldly that his brother needed a lesson and had to be put in solitary confinement for causing trouble. Yusong suddenly leaned close to Sejun's ear and whispered a mysterious message. "Oh, right. She told me to tell you to stop fighting." The statement left Sejun frozen in shock. "What?" Yusong calmly walked out of the room, leaving Sejun standing stunned among the henchmen lying scattered on the floor. Minsu woke up and realized he had been thrown into solitary confinement once again. "That long-haired bastard! Next time I see him, I'm going to rip all his hair out." A sudden stomach cramp hit, forcing Minsu to sit down on the toilet, but he still felt restless, as if he had forgotten something extremely important. Just as he was about to finish, Minsu was horrified to realize the water tap wasn't running. He panicked, wondering if the tap was broken, and shuddered at the thought of not being able to wash his hands. Just then, a voice from outside echoed in, reminding him that there was toilet paper right there, and the tap only worked at scheduled times in the evening. Minsu breathed a sigh of relief when he found the toilet paper roll and inwardly realized that this time he wasn't even tied up like in previous solitary stints. Memories suddenly flooded back, snapping Minsu to his senses. He frantically rushed over and punched the cell door hard. He screamed at the prison guard standing outside, "Hey, you crazy guard! Have you lost your mind? Why are you here?" Ignoring the sarcastic question about whether he had washed his hands, Yusong Minsu roared through his tears. "Who asked you to play the hero and save me? You had a good family. You should have lived happily. You idiot. Isn't it true that you already got into medical school? Don't save me. Get out of here and leave me alone. Just abandon a murderer like me. Why do you have to ruin your life for a murderer?" Minsu screamed in despair through the solitary cell bars. He confessed painfully that if Yuseong got stuck here because of him, he would live in remorse and guilt for the rest of his life. Yuseong stood outside and calmly admitted, "I am a fool indeed. Who called you a murderer? I believe in you. I believe you didn't kill anyone, Minsu, because I am your brother." Seeing Minsu sniffling, Yusung teased him, asking if he was crying, which made Minsu snap and deny it, even though the sobs were still clearly audible. He asked anxiously if he could really get out of here if everything went according to what his brother said. Yusung affirmed that Minsu just needed to stop causing trouble so he wouldn't be thrown into solitary confinement again, follow the program, and listen to him. Then everything would be fine. However, Minsu suddenly made a firm request. "I want to fight that long-haired bastard again." When Yusong asked why he wanted to, facing someone he knew he couldn't beat, Misu gritted his teeth in fury. "That bastard had insulted my mother. Damn it, I can take anything else but not that." Seeing his brother being insulted, Yuseong didn't stop him. On the contrary, he encouraged him. "Fight him! I'll teach you how to win." His eyes suddenly turned cold and sharp. They were filled with a menacing gaze as he looked through the solitary confinement door. "If you lose to that guy, don't bother coming back to see me." The remaining 15 days of solitary confinement were Misu's only chance to prepare for this rematch, in this life-or-death battle. In the darkness of the cell, while everyone else was fast asleep, Seijin remained sitting still, like a beast of prey waiting. Yuseong knew. He knew 15 days was too short to rebuild Misu's physical strength. So the only thing he would teach him from now on was how to defeat Ga Sejun. Did he really think that was enough? To take down that bastard Ga Sejun? Misu asked skeptically as he walked down the corridor. Yuseong replied coldly, "If you lose, handle it yourself. Don't expect me to step in." Misu just clicked his tongue in resignation and stopped in front of the cell door. Yuseong gripped the door handle and asked one last time, "Did you memorize the tactics?" Misu stepped inside, decisively confirming, "Of course. Just trust me, brother." As soon as he stepped into the room, Misu faced the thugs, who were waiting for him. Li Chang-hee and his lackeys laughed smugly. "You're back enjoying your time in solitary, you bastard." He taunted, asking if being locked up made Misu stronger and demanded to test that immediately. Misu bowed his head and flashed a sinister smile. "I said I'd turn you all into puppies, right? But then I thought about it." Amidst the confusion of the entire room, Misu suddenly dropped to the floor, prostrating himself, and shouted frantically, "Why should I be the one to turn you guys into puppies, Misu?" He laughed crazily while looking miserable. "Becoming a puppy myself, wouldn't that be faster?" Woof woof. Give this man an Oscar. This bizarre behavior was actually part of the endurance strategy Yuseong had taught him. To win you first, have to know how to endure all the attacks and insults from the enemy while waiting for the one perfect opportunity. Even when the other inmates used ink pens to draw circles all over his chest to make a go board, Misu had to grit his teeth and hold the position. The endurance was pushed to the limit when the bullies sat there playing board games right on Misu's body as if he were nothing more than a toy. They argued loudly about cheating on the score. "You bastard, you only have 33 points." The other guy retorted, "No, it's 43 points, you idiot." Lying under their feet, Misu screamed internally at the extreme humiliation. Finally, his limit shattered. He bolted up and shouted wildly, "Damn it, I can't take this anymore." The sudden resistance from Misu made the thugs in the room furious. Lee Chang-hee roared angrily, "Trying to quit being a pet, huh?" Another guy was annoyed because the game on Misu's back was ruined. "Do you want me to straighten things out in here again?" Amidst the crowd's rage, Misu could only grit his teeth and tell himself to endure. Outside the iron door, Yu Seong whispered to his brother, "Just keep enduring. Only 5 more days. I'll handle this room for you." The guards controlled everything during class, so he couldn't intervene right now. Yu Seong adjusted his glasses, his eyes filled with anxiety as he warned, "Please don't fight until then. I'll have the stage ready for you in 5 days." But reality was a series of brutal beatings. In extreme pain, Misu only knew how to grit his teeth and take it. Endure it. The day to pay them back is coming. By the second day, Misu began a series of humiliating labor days. He was forced to kneel on the floor, both hands holding a rag, scrubbing continuously like a machine. The third day was time for writing inspection reports. Full of pressure amidst a mountain of paperwork, frantic screams echoed endlessly. Moon Hyun-jun trembled, holding a pen under the supervision of a fierce bully. "Write it properly. Don't make me angry. Just writing sorry for being born isn't enough. Damn it." By the 4th day, Misu was taken out to the lawn and forced to act like a literal animal. He could only growl in extreme indignation. During the meal that followed, the atmosphere suddenly became strangely stifling. Seijun and his lackeys were eating happily when they suddenly froze. Their faces showed obvious shock and bewilderment when they saw an unexpected event happening right in front of them. Misu was kneeling on the floor gobbling down rice balls, like a literal animal. He deliberately barked "woof woof" excitedly and praised the food as delicious to please the guards, who were watching. But behind that submissive exterior was an iron will. He told himself to endure because tomorrow was the 5th day, the day that all this humiliation would end. After the haunting meal, Misu vomited repeatedly in the restroom because his body was overloaded. Moon Hyun-jun asked anxiously if he was pushing himself too hard, but Misu just replied wearily that he could still endure it. Seeing Misu exhausted to the point of constant hiccups, Hyun-jun secretly handed him an energy bar. He kindly advised Misu to eat it to keep his strength up, because if he kept throwing everything up, his body would collapse soon. Hyun-jun warned Misu to keep this absolutely secret from others, because this was something he had bought with his own pocket money. Immediately after, during outdoor training, the guards continued to mock Poppy 1, which was Misu. They sneered that even though he had been beaten to the point of vomiting, his appearance still showed no improvement. At the same time, they smugly claimed that only they had the right to treat him that way. A prisoner laughed so hard, he turned red in the face. He kept insulting him. "What kind of way to run is that? It looks so funny." But his smile suddenly faded. Instead, a look of panic appeared when he realized Hyun-jun was sprinting straight toward a restricted area. He screamed in alarm because in front of Hyun-jun was the prison's cooking and logistics team. A powerful collision occurred, making the scene chaotic accompanied by angry swearing. Three burly guys from the kitchen team with scarred faces and cold intent looked down at Hyunjun. They growled, "Who the hell are you trying to mess with us?" In the face of imminent danger, Hyunjun kept up the guise of an animal. From afar, Sejun was resting on the field. Sejun recalled the image of the warden Yuseong taking Misu away and began to question the true identity of that person. He wondered if someone had sent that warden here, or if perhaps his own sister had secretly arranged everything. Suddenly, one of the guys from the kitchen team roared angrily, "Hey!" the leader of room A3. Sejun glanced over suspiciously as he saw the three guys in aprons approaching. The leader of the cooking team gestured and asked, "Is this the dog of yours?" He brutally stomped his foot onto Hyunjun's head and scolded him. "Sejun, you need to manage your pet better." He growled, accusing Hyunjun of attacking his team first, and asked if this was a declaration of war from room A3. While kicking Hyunjun's head repeatedly, he laughed excitedly. "Ha ha, it feels so good to hit him. Hey, let me borrow him for a few days. I have to torture him a bit more." He thought, watching his roommate get beaten while the others didn't say a word. After all, they couldn't afford to offend the supply team over some pet. Not far away, Minsu was quietly observing everything. He couldn't help but remember the time when he was being shunned and bullied. Hyunjun hadn't hesitated to give him the only candy he had, even though his brother had strictly warned him not to cause any trouble during this time, but just standing there watching Hyunjun get bullied was impossible. Suddenly, a blue plastic tray flew through the air at incredible speed. The kitchen soldier hadn't even finished his mocking laughter when the tray smashed straight into his face, a devastating blow. The impact was so strong that it sent him flying backward to the shock of his accomplices. Seeing that scene, the surrounding prisoners and even Sejun were stunned. Minsu stood up amidst the crowd's bewilderment. "Puppy!" he roared with fury. "You bunch of thugs! Causing trouble outside, and now you're bringing that trashy act in here too." Minsu stepped forward, mocking them, saying that even though they were treated like pigs here, having their dignity trampled and their wills crushed, there was still a limit to everything. Minsu helped Hyunjun up, saying that no matter how bad things get, dogs biting dogs, don't you feel ashamed? Seeing his own man get hit, the red-haired guy from the kitchen team walked over, patted Sejun's shoulder, and warned, "This isn't a game, right? Should I tell the head of the kitchen team that you're declaring war on us?" Without responding, Sejun immediately delivered a clean elbow strike straight to his face. Sejun spoke through gritted teeth full of killing intent in response to the kitchen team's provocation. "War. Go ahead. But first I have to take care of this rebel." Minsu gritted his teeth silently, apologizing to his brother for ruining the perfect plan that Kang Yu-seong had painstakingly prepared once again. The surrounding prisoners started buzzing with gossip. Some wondered if this was a war with the kitchen team or a riot, while others didn't care and just wanted to see a fight immediately. Minsu bitterly realized he couldn't avoid this mess, but he promised himself he would fulfill the remaining promise to his brother. The crowd kept mocking them. They were certain that Sejun would easily crush this murderer rookie in a heartbeat. Sejun casually reached up to tie back his long hair, smirking dangerously. "You craving another beating? I'll oblige." Responding to that provocation, Minsu suddenly cracked a crazed smile. As he tightened his fists, he made a bold offer. "Wanna bet whoever wins this fight will become the room leader?" Facing the tall leader, his eyes burned with confidence and a determination for revenge. He firmly declared, "This time, I will win." At the Juvenile Detention Center, students still have to attend basic academic classes. During class hours, all authority belongs to the correctional Officers, meaning whatever happens here is completely under their control. Kang Yuseong sat by the window, silently calculating the Phase 1 plan to make Min-soo the room leader. He was confident that today Min-soo would defeat Sejun to take the top spot because he had prepared an absolutely perfect classroom environment for this match. The most dedicated coach of the year is here. Yuseong had arranged the desks into a circle to create a private arena for his younger brother. He stood checking his watch, muttering impatiently, "It's almost time, but why aren't they here yet?" Suddenly, excited cheers from the courtyard echoed, making him look out. Below the window, hundreds of students were surrounding a large circle, continuously cheering and mocking. The crowd kept jeering at Min-soo. "Are you a comedian or a murderer?" They were astonished by Sejun's ability to dodge and mocked Min-soo for failing to touch his opponent even once. "What kind of murderer are you? You're killing people with laughter." Witnessing the unexpected scene, Yuseong sighed helplessly. He lunged over, gripping the window bars. His face twisted in anger as he saw his brother not following the plan. He screamed frantically, "You idiot Lee Min-soo, you moron!" The cheers below in the yard grew louder as Sejun landed a powerful punch straight into Min-soo's face. The blow sent Min-soo flying backward. To prepare for this fight, Yuseong had taught Min-soo the most practical combat techniques. Step 1. A powerful hook to break the opponent's defense. Immediately. After that, Step 2, a vicious punch aimed straight at the opponent's liver. Step 3, an uppercut. Step 4, a mid-kick. Step 5, a low kick. Step 6, a front kick. Step 7, a spinning kick. And Step 8, a roundhouse kick. Yuseong continuously showcased his skillful combat techniques to teach his brother. "Look at this, I'll dance one round for you to learn." Finally, a powerful straight punch. He looked through the prison cell bars and asked, "It's been a while since you've seen this move. Does it look familiar?" He had never practiced seriously and only mimicked a few moves. "Do you still remember what you picked up when you were a kid?" Yuseong asked sternly, questioning if Min-soo thought that was enough to defeat his opponent. Min-soo admitted with anxiety that Sejun was truly strong. Yuseong silently assessed that Sejun fought quite well for someone without formal training. Min-soo was astonished, wondering if that was natural talent. But Yuseong realized that Sejun's moves, while looking flashy, lacked substance and completely lacked cohesion in technique. Seong pushed his glasses up, asserting that Sejun had no proper combos. At the end of the day, Sejun was just a normal guy who knew how to fight. He would never win against someone who had been trained. Hearing that, Min-soo hung his head in frustration, because in reality, he was getting beaten to a pulp without being able to touch his opponent even once. He doubted learning these moves and still getting my butt kicked. This sucks. Yuseong immediately explained why he wanted the fight to happen in the classroom, with the pre-arranged desk layout addressing Min-soo's confusion about the difference in fighting. There. Yuseong explained that if he kept dodging, Min-soo could trap Sejun in a corner because the classroom had many blind spots to trap him. Use the surrounding environment to force him into a corner. Yuseong insisted that once he did, that Min-soo's combos would definitely hit their mark. However, the reality on the ground was playing out in a very unfavorable way. Sejun was still standing firm, arrogant, while the crowd of prisoners around them started shouting in disappointment because the match was too boring. They constantly insulted Min-soo as a loser and challenged him to fight properly instead of just taking hits. Min-soo reached up to wipe the blood running down his nose, realizing in a panic, "Oh crap, this is going nowhere." At the training ground, all hope for a perfect plan completely vanished because in front of Min-soo, there wasn't a single wall to corner his opponent. Hundreds of inmates surrounded them, forming a giant circle, and turning this place into a death arena in the middle of an open space. Yu Seong sprinted frantically along the corridor, his face clearly showing panic. He yelled in desperation because his foolish younger brother never listened. Standing before the barbed wire fence, Yu Seong was stunned to realize the crowd was too large, obscuring every development of the fight. Discarding all initial calculations, Yu Seong decided to stop this fight immediately before things went too far. He roared, demanding everyone disperse, but suddenly a piece of popcorn flew straight into his face, making him freeze. Yu Seong was stunned to realize someone was casually sitting there, watching the fight like a thrilling movie. That right there is the warden. He's lounging in his chair, stuffing his face with popcorn and smirking as he asks why Yu Seong is making such a scene instead of watching the show. Yu Seong stands at attention, panicking. Yu Seong tries to explain he's the new guard and is just trying to stop the fight, but the warden just coldly asks, "And why would you do that?" The warden keeps crunching on his popcorn, then suddenly asks Yu Seong if he likes watching animal documentaries, the ones where the little mice show up. Yu Seong is stunned, completely lost as to what this old man is playing at. Just as he's wondering, the warden starts a cruel comparison. He says, when a hungry snake is hunting a mouse in a nature documentary, the camera crew never interferes. They don't intervene because the snake eating the mouse is just the law of nature. With a crazed look and a chilling smile, he insists that the battle between the prisoners is exactly the same, just another part of the natural order that humans should respect. He lowers his voice to emphasize that watching them kill each other is a pleasure like no other. Witnessing this level of depravity, Yu Seong shudders, terrified to realize the man running this place is a total psychopath. The warden smirks and casually invites Yu Seong to sit down and enjoy the show until someone finally lands. A real hit. Down in the yard, Min-soo lunges forward like a moth to a flame, screaming with determination. Just one solid hit, and you're finished. He starts using what he learned, unleashing. Step 1, a feint hook to distract him. But Sejun easily tilts his head, dodging the punch by a hair. He asks coldly, "What do you think you're doing?" Immediately, Sejun lands a brutal counterpunch right to Min-soo's face, leaving him dazed. In extreme pain, Min-soo can only pray to himself. Lee's just one hit. Sejun doesn't let his opponent catch his breath. He keeps closing in. As Min-soo tries to execute step 2, Sejun mocks him with a smug grin. "Are you practicing first-grade math?" Min-soo struggles to throw step 3, but still only hits thin air. Sejun casually dodges and keeps taunting, "Oh, that's right, 2 comes after 1. Standing by the window, Yu Seong is drenched in sweat as he watches his brother getting completely overwhelmed. Min-soo realizes bitterly that his reach is too short, his stamina is shot, and all his strategies are useless against someone like Sejun. Despair washes over Min-soo when he realizes there isn't a single wall around to complete the combo as his brother had planned. Powerless, he tells himself all he can do now is take the hit. Sejun unleashes a thunderous kick straight into Min-soo with such force that he's sent flying back into the crowd of inmates who were watching. The crowd erupts in angry shouts. "Damn it, why? Why did you fly into us? You idiot, Sejun, aim properly. Get out of the way." Witnessing that pathetic sight, Yu Seong covers his face in pain and sighs, accepting the defeat. If you're going to fight like that, you might as well go to sleep. Min-soo lies there, sprawled out amidst the insults of the crowd. "Get lost, you loser." He grinds his teeth, enduring the humiliation. "Go ahead and mock me." The pain in his knees and all over his body starts to break his resolve. Min-soo thinks to himself, if he keeps this up, he's going to lose, just as pathetically as last time. So he figures it's better to give up to avoid getting hurt worse. Suddenly, rough hands grab him, hoisting him up. They scream at him, saw full of rage. How long are you going to lie there, huh? Why are you just staring blankly, you idiot? Fight back. If you give up now, you're going to have to deal with me. Minsu looks around, dazed, realizing he's surrounded by menacing faces, forcing him to continue the fight. Sejun strolls over, delivering one last insult. What's the matter, mommy's little boy? What are you doing? Looking for your mom. Minsu lowers his head, but then a wicked smile suddenly blooms on his lips. Sejun freezes, asking suspiciously, What's so funny? Minsu calmly replies, Oh, nothing. My bad. I just remembered something. He clenches his fist, baring his bloody teeth in a crazed grin. One way to land that combo. On you. He boasts smugly. I remember now, hey hey hey. I finally found a way to land that combo on you. Outside, the crowd starts losing patience and screams. In frustration, Hey, stroll time is over. End it already, you idiots. What are you staring at? Are you fighting or confessing your love? You two morons. Sejun also loses his patience. Mommy's little boy, let's wrap this up. We're almost out of time. Minsu slowly stands up and calmly replies, Fine by me. I was just about to end it anyway. I figured out how to use the combo, but how do I lure him into the trap? The memory of the conversation in solitary confinement returns. Yu Seong suggested that if he could just pin Sejun against a wall, he'd be guaranteed a win. But Minsu had already spotted the problem and asked his brother, Don't you get it? He analyzed that no matter how you look at it, Sejun would never be stupid enough to let himself be backed into a corner. Standing outside the bars, Yu Seong nodded in agreement. That's true, but after you corner him, you can bait him into getting closer. Minsu sat on the floor, sighing sarcastically. I already thought that far, genius, but no matter how much I try, I'm sure it would have succeeded. If so, then this plan is a waste of time. Hearing this, Yu Seong smirked cryptically. In that case, let me teach you a magic keyword that will make Sejun instantly charge right at you. Minsu panicked, grabbing the window bars and shouting, You hoarder, if you had a trump card, why didn't you give it to me sooner? Yu Seong's gaze turned icy as he confirmed with conviction, Just hearing this word, Sejun will lose all control. Minsu frantically urged, Hurry up and tell on me what it is. What on earth is it? Back to reality in the middle of the yard, Minsu suddenly bellows, Hey Sejun, is Gasemin pretty? He laughs while covering his face with a crazed look and bulging eyes. Instantly, Sejun loses all his reason. His face twists in fury. He screams, Who told you my sister's name? And lunges forward, throwing a massive punch at Minsu, leaving him stunned. Where did you hear that name? Sejun roars in a frenzy. Witnessing that overreaction, Minsu inwardly gloats because the magic keyword, his brother's advice, really worked. Sejun completely lost his mind, screaming and demanding to know how Minsu knew about his sister while staring at the madman standing before him. Minsu remembered the label, the kid, that Sejun had used to insult his mother, and replied with contempt, Is that the best insult you could come up with? Leaving Sejun stunned. Minsu decisively blocked that lightning-fast punch in a spectacular fashion. He immediately grabbed his opponent by the collar and roared, You little mama's boy, now you'll see. He threw a decisive strike that caught Sejun off guard, accompanied by a mocking warning, Don't you dare start crying and calling for your sister, you hear me? Sejun smirked, regaining his composure, and snapped back. What does knowing about my sister have to do with this fight? He intended to step back to dodge Minsu's punch, but the harsh reality set in. The crowd of prisoners surrounding them started shoving and pushing, making the space incredibly cramped. Sejun was shocked to realize that he was completely blocked off from behind by this living wall. Seizing this once-in-a-lifetime opening, Minsu immediately launched Step 1, a massive hook punch that landed square on his opponent. Minsu roared with excitement. "Come on, let me show you what real pain feels like, Sejun." Stuck in a desperate situation with nowhere left to dodge, he tried to gamble on a counterattack, but his arm suddenly got stuck in the chaotic crowd. While Sejun was still panicked and unable to move, Minsu decisively launched the finisher Step 2, a punch aimed straight at his opponent's liver. Sejun gritted his teeth, realizing he'd fallen into a trap, and shouted in desperation. Because he was pinned from behind, every movement was completely restricted. Seizing the opportunity, Minsu unleashed Step 3 with an uppercut, snapping his opponent's head back. Watching that seen from afar, Aoseong was stunned to see his younger brother not following the original plan. He had told Minsu to use furniture or classroom walls to corner his opponent, but now Minsu had found a much more ruthless method. He was turning the crowd of prisoners themselves into living walls to cage Sejun in. Minsu continuously executed the Step 1 and Step 2 combo, raining down blows so fast that Sejun could only take the beating. In a panic, Sejun realized he couldn't dodge or counterattack if he just kept standing there. He tried to slip to the side to escape, but Minsu saw right through it. He launched Step 5, a powerful low kick that slammed into Sejun's leg, causing him intense pain. Minsu laughed triumphantly and immediately returned to Step 1, unleashing a flurry of punches to his opponent's face. Sejun struggled, realizing his right side was blocked, so he tried to find an exit in the opposite direction, but was immediately cut off by Step 4, a mid-range kick straight to the ribs. "Where do you think you're going?" Sejun panicked, and in a state of absolute terror, realizing he was completely locked in and couldn't escape anywhere. Sejun saw Minsu as a giant and terrifying monster looming over him. He madly poured out a rain of blows with every combination, 1, 2, 3, 4, and finally ignored everything else to land a series of continuous Step 1 punches. Sejun, with a bloody and swollen face, could only try to keep his last bit of consciousness to find a way to swing his fist, to retaliate in vain. "What the hell are you doing? Do you think swinging your arms wildly like that, Ansoi, is going to hit me?" He threw a thunderous punch that sent his opponent flying backward and roared, "Messing with my mother means you're done for." Rage flared, causing Minsu to frantically unload every damn hit. Just thinking about it made him even angrier. He began executing the continuous combo sequence at the exact tempo they had practiced. Minsu roared while attacking continuously. "What the hell do you even know?" Seeing that sight, the crowd of prisoners started buzzing in amazement. "What's wrong with him? Did he lose control? Is Sejun really going to lose at this level?" Sejun struggled to defend himself in agony. He realized he couldn't take any more hits and was determined that his next attack had to land. But reality was crueler than he thought. Minsu was faster and followed up with an incredibly powerful punch that left Sejun dizzy. Minsu breathed heavily, full of fury. "What do you know about me or my mother to dare run your mouth? Apologize, Sejun." Minsu didn't stop. He screamed, demanding his opponent apologize immediately. The burst of strength left Sejun completely exhausted. He wheezed out, barely audible, "I..." As he collapsed to the floor, Minsu delivered the final resentment-filled blow. "Apologize to my mother right now." The entire arena held its breath. The fellow prisoners stared with wide eyes, frozen, unable to believe what just happened before their eyes. "What the hell is this? Sejun has been taken down." Minsu stood there, sweating profusely, panting with exhaustion. "Damn it, this guy!" Watisiu, even until the very end, still wouldn't apologize. The crowd started to get rowdy, as they realized the impossible outcome. Sejun lost, did Minsu win? Someone mockingly called him a stupid puppy, wondering if Minsu would now become the new department head, while others claimed that Sejun was weak to begin with, which is why he lost to someone like that. Suddenly a voice, sharp and commanding, broke the chaos. "Everyone clear out!" The guards roared, forcing everyone to perform the greeting ritual immediately. A long line of prisoners bowed in unison and shouted. Among the subservient ranks, a warden with a cold, authoritative air walked past. "Oh, I didn't think you'd win, but you actually, did it." The warden approached with an excited smile. He loved watching a good drama in this animal world, where a mouse could take down a whole snake. Minsu, panting in exhaustion, was stunned, wondering to himself, "I'm the mouse and Sejun is the snake." The warden leaned close to his face, smirking mockingly. "You were plotting since you arrived. Here and now you even managed to entertain me during the fight. Huh." Minsu could only grit his teeth, letting out a shameful squeak to save his own life when asked about how to handle Sejun, who was lying unconscious on Aoseong's shoulder. He nonchalantly ordered, "Throw him in solitary confinement or something." Aoseong silently carried Sejun past his own. "Ah, brother." He sighed, annoyed by Minsu's stubbornness. "Man, who does he take after to be so disobedient?" Minsu smirked, replying defiantly, "Who else? He takes after his brother, who else?" Even though his face was still covered in blood and bruises, Minsu still looked triumphant for having achieved his goal of defeating his opponent. Aoseong pushed his glasses up. His gaze became cold and calculating. "Show's over time for Scenario 2. The setting suddenly shifted to a quiet art studio. Gasaman was focused on her easel. She asked softly, full of worry, "So, my younger brother has been thrown into solitary confinement." Aosong looked clearly flustered, sweat beading on his forehead as he had to explain the unexpected incident. "That wasn't part of the original plan. Everything went off track. I'm sorry." Semin gave a cold, annoyed click of her tongue. She demanded that he stop moving so she could focus on finishing her painting of him. Aoseong was struggling to hold his pose like a muscular statue holding an apple while semi-nude as a model. Semin snapped because he kept changing poses is ruining the painting she's been pouring so much effort into. Yuseong complains in exhaustion, wondering how much longer he has to hold this position. "This pose is too hard to hold. Maybe we should pick something else." He looks around, points at a completely nude statue, and suggests, "How about that one?" Seeing Yuseong hesitate, because the statue is a bit too much, Semin calmly asserts, "That is exactly the point." She coldly orders him to stop complaining because the drawing session is over. Yuseong timidly asks if he can see the painting, but Semin just sighs, saying his moving ruined the piece, leaving him to just mumble an apology. Semin confidently looks at her work and declares, "This is enough to get me into art school as valedictorian, right?" Contrasting that confidence, Yuseong looks at the painting with his eyes popping out in disbelief. This is supposed to be art, and this is me." Semin nonchalantly replies, "You don't need to look so apologetic. It's just that the model was a bit lacking." She suddenly changes the subject, asking if he is worried about his younger brother because he just got thrown into solitary confinement. Yuseong thinks she is talking about that disastrous painting, but Semin seriously warns that he is truly in big trouble. "I mean, your brother got involved with the kitchen logistics team." She reveals she used to be a member of the cooking team in the women's wing and knows they are an extremely tight-knit bunch. "You touch one, and the whole lot of them will come to get your brother." Among them is someone Yuseong needs to be extra careful of in the cafeteria, a guy with bulging, vein-popping muscular arms. He suddenly appears in front of Min-soo and asks, "You're Lee Min-soo, right?" That is Jang Do-bok, the captain of the kitchen team. Min-soo blankly confirms his identity. Immediately, Jang Do-bok dumps a massive amount of food all over his tray. Min-soo is stunned. What are you talking about? Wait, isn't this too much? Are you trying to fatten me up for slaughter? Seaman explains why this guy is so scary. Jang Do-bok looks like a good person, but in reality, he is an extremely dangerous and uncontrollable guy. A horrifying truth about Jang Do-bok is revealed. He is the one who almost killed 2 guards. Min-soo freezes looking at the food, overflowing from the tray in astonishment. Jang Do-bok, the kitchen captain, flashes a sinister smile and declares, "My guys said you caused trouble for them. You deserve to get this much." As he continues to dump more food, he adds a cold threat. "You're going to regret daring to mess with this kitchen team." Looking at the other's ferocious face, Min-soo immediately plays dumb. Me, I caused trouble for the kitchen team." When pressed about his identity, he cleverly deflects, "I am indeed Min-soo, but maybe it's just someone else with the same name. After all, it's a common name." Seeing his honest demeanor, Jang Do-bok unexpectedly changes his attitude. He scratches his head and apologizes. "Oh, really? My bad. Eat up, okay? I already apologized, so I'll let this slide." However, another member of the kitchen team suddenly screams, exposing him. "Hey, he's lying. You need to double check. That's him, the one who threw the trash can lid. That's him, Lee Min-soo." Realizing the situation isn't going well, Min-soo immediately bolts for his life, to everyone's shock. "What the heck?" Jang Do-bok roars upon realizing he was tricked. He goes wild, shouting the name Min-soo echoing throughout the cafeteria. "Damn you, Lee Min-soo!" Meanwhile, Min-soo runs while laughing triumphantly. Hey, that was a close one." The shouting of, "Stop right there!" still doesn't stop chasing after him. In another development at the majestic presidential palace, South Korean President Han Man-soo walks out with an authoritative stride and a beaming smile to welcome the guests. "Thank you all for traveling so far to attend this summit." At the high-level meeting between party leaders and the president, Han Man-soo walks out with a cheerful face, shaking hands intimately with Assemblyman Kang. "Assemblyman, you look so radiant." Assemblyman Kang also quickly responds with a professional social smile. "It's all thanks to you, Mr. President." They act out a play of solidarity before a barrage of camera lenses, declaring they will cast aside all rivalry to focus on national interest. However, right as the cameras are still flashing, Han Man-soo leans in close to Assemblyman Kang's ear, bringing up the fact that they were once rivals in the presidential race. He smirks arrogantly. "But now for the country's future, work hard like a subordinate of mine, understand?" As soon as he finishes, Han Man-soo suddenly slaps Assemblyman Kang's buttocks in a humiliating manner. Assemblyman Kang is frozen sweat pouring down in shock and shame. "What the hell? I slapped my butt." Right in front of the whole country, rage erupts. Once he gets home, Assemblyman Kang frantically beats a punching bag to vent his anger. He grits his teeth and roars in resentment. "Han Man-soo, how dare you insult me like this? Take this, take this." In his fury, he turns to look at Yu Seong and growls, "Your father is having to endure this humiliation." "What do you think about that?" Standing before the planning board, Yu Seong calmly asserts that bringing down President Han Man-soo is actually much easier than imagined. He believes that if they just destroy his biggest political foundation, the juvenile detention center, everything will collapse. That is also the real reason Assemblyman Kang put his son into that hellhole as a plant. When asked about the progress, Yu Seong coldly reveals what he witnessed inside. That facility is absolutely not the educational place the public believes in, but a brutal scene of tyranny. Yu Xiong continues to expose the horrifying truth. It is a place where children are forced to use violence against each other. All forms of abuse are rampant, and fights are intentionally ignored just to serve as entertainment. He asserts, firmly, this place is not a reformatory, it's a hellscape. Yu Xiong's face turns grim when thinking about the brutal reality occurring inside those iron walls. Hearing this, Assemblyman Kang claps his hands in satisfaction. Wonderful. So the Reform Center is Mansu's weak point, huh? This Assemblyman is quite the calculator. He believes that just leaking this information to the press could take down his rival immediately with a single blow. However, the old fox suddenly pauses, realizing that this still isn't enough. He coldly reminds him that juvenile criminals, after all, are still wicked enemies, and the real victims probably just want them to suffer even more. Assemblyman Kang orders Yu Xiong to go back and dig up even more terrible things from the inside. Yu Xiong walked slowly out of the room, his heart heavy under the weight of his father's ruthless demands, and muttered to himself that he hadn't finished his duty at the prison yet. He stood and watched the prisoners crawling on the ground in humiliating positions, drenched in sweat under the scorching sun, when suddenly Yu Xiong loudly called out, "Li Min-su, step out here!" Min-su looked up bewildered, not knowing what his older brother was planning, as Yu Xiong declared that Min-su had to go outside for some special training. Min-su was overjoyed, silently thanking his brother, thinking he would get priority rest. "Damn, this is awesome, thanks bro." He celebrated too early. Yu Xiong suddenly roared, forcing him into a new, more grueling torture position, the lobster. Min-su screamed in agony and humiliation, forced to crawl like a crab across the yard. Lobster. Damn lobster. Lobster. Yu Xiong explained that if Min-su were the only one exempt from training, it would arouse suspicion, so he had to make Min-su's situation look even more miserable than the others. Min-su cried out in frustration, questioning this helpful sabotage while still writhing on the ground. Amidst the desperate screaming of his younger brother, Yu Xiong coldly announced, "Now let me explain the second part of the plan." The Juvenile Detention Center operates on a strictly enforced system of reward and penalty points. Yu Xiong pulled out a detailed list, explaining that only by accumulating 100 reward points would a prisoner be considered for parole. Conversely, the more penalty points, the further the day of freedom would recede into the distance. He looked down at his brother, who was drenched in sweat in the lobster position, and coldly announced, "Your score is a flat -50. With 2 stints in solitary and 1 major brawl Min-su, you haven't earned a single reward point yet." His eyes went wide as he gasped out in desperation, How do I earn points?" "The fastest way for you to earn a large number of points right now is to volunteer as a kitchen assistant for the cooking crew." As soon as he heard the words, "cooking crew," Min-su screamed in shock, immediately recalling the fierce face of Jiang Du-bo, the captain of the cooking crew, who was full of murderous intent. Min-su panicked and shouted, "No, there is no way that bastard is there. I'll die if I go in there. Those people are looking for ways to get me. He would rather choose to be tortured than face those demons. I don't care. Just kill me. I'd rather stay here." Min-su kept thrashing on the ground in protest of his brother's plan, but every time a guard walked by, Min-su had to return to the torture position and shout, "Lobster." Even though he was shouting "lobster" mechanically on command inside, he was screaming wildly, "Never lobster, just keep doing lobster." He would rather endure this physical pain than step foot into that death trap kitchen. He screamed frantically in his heart that he would rather call out the name of this crustacean thousands of times than ever join the cooking crew. Witnessing his brother's extreme determination, Yuxiong sighed, frustrated. He had to give in and promise to find another job, to help him earn points. Min-su was as happy as if he'd struck gold, silently grateful for having the best brother in the world. The space suddenly became peaceful. Under the gentle afternoon sun, the sound of rustling leaves mixed with the chirping of birds created a rare, quiet atmosphere in the prison. Inside the classroom, the curtains swayed gently in the cool breeze, creating the perfect conditions for a good nap. Min-su lay slumped over his desk, enjoying the relaxation after a morning exhausted by torture exercises. He dreamed, whispering to himself, "I wish I could sleep in a little longer." However, a continuous simulated engine noise rang out in his ears, interrupting his sleep. Fury erupted. Min-su slammed his hand on the table and screamed crazily, "Damn it! Let me sleep!" He flew into a rage, yelling at his fellow inmates for daring to make those noisy sounds with their mouths, insisting that he no longer needed these robotic vacuum cleaners. Below on the floor, the prisoners were still crawling, using their mouths to mimic engine noises, to scrub the floor mechanically, following the bizarre order that Min-su had established. Some even confidently claimed they would work better if they made the engine noises themselves. They enthusiastically declared that if the noise was too loud, they would switch to sleep mode to avoid disturbing others. Min-su sat and watched, thinking that the cleaning was almost done, but began to worry when he learned that cleaning one classroom only yielded a mere 1 reward point. At this rate, he wondered how long it would take to accumulate 100 points to be free. Just then, the guard walked in and asked if the cleaning was finished. Min-su quickly saluted and reported that it was nearly finished. The guard announced that Min-su would have to move to the next location alone to do the additional volunteer work he had registered for. Min-su was overjoyed, silently thanking his brother Yu-seong for arranging such a profitable opportunity to earn points. But the moment he stepped into the new location, the smile on Min-su's face froze. In front of him was not the easy job he had imagined, but the captain of the cooking crew, with a face full of murderous intent waiting. He smirked threateningly. "The liar Min-su is back again. You've arrived. Get ready to be punished." Min-su looked around in shock, realizing he was standing in the middle of the death trap kitchen, surrounded by the hulking guys of the support crew. He froze, realizing he had been tricked into a trap. "This isn't what I signed up for. You promised you wouldn't send me to the cooking crew." Sold out by his brother. Already. In his heart, he screamed at the brother who had betrayed his promise. "Kang Yu-seong, you bastard! Jang Dubo, a hulking man who carried a burning dream of becoming the top chef in South Korea, was crazily waving a pan amidst rising blazing flames. His strength was truly impressive. His right arm could easily control a 3-kilogram cast iron pan and flip 2 kilograms of food with ease, while his left hand was trained to perform more delicate operations in seasoning and presentation. However, the harsh reality was reflected on the prisoners' meal trays. They complained incessantly, "Damn it, this tastes terrible. How much longer do I have to eat this stuff? A chef like this should be sued." To Jang Du-bo, criticizing the food was nothing short of a direct insult to his honor. He gritted his teeth, veins popping out on his face, trying to suppress his rage. "Those bastards! I have to be patient." But looking at the kitchen, in chaos behind him, where flames flared wildly and food flew everywhere, it was clear that there wasn't a single true culinary talent in this hellhole. To make matters worse, the kitchen nightmare continued to escalate when a shout rang out. "Aha! The spaghetti is burnt! It's burnt! It's burnt!" A lackey with a cheerful, foolish face brought out a pitch-black pan and exclaimed, "Dubo, I know how to create oil. Our country has now become an oil-producing nation." Not stopping there, a pot of soybean paste soup suddenly turned a deep purple color, causing another guy to be confused and ask about the color. "Who put purple cabbage in here? Come out now." He completely lost control and roared, tears streaming down his face. An entire kitchen, full of people, and not one guy who knows how to cook. Even though he wanted to tear his useless underlings to shreds because he considered them part of his tribe, he had to force his anger down. However, with Lee, Min-soo, it was a completely different story. Jang Du-bo coldly grabbed his hulking pan and walked toward Min-soo with terrifying murderous intent. He gritted out a statement. "Min-soo has insulted his tribe and will receive no mercy." Towering behind his bewildered younger brother, Jang Du-bo declares, with intense menace, "I'll teach you a lesson with this pan." But he suddenly freezes, eyes bulging in shock as he stares at the flaming pan in front of him. Min-soo is showing off his cooking skills, masterfully using 2 pans at once with professional seasoning techniques that leave the team leader unable to believe his eyes. Overjoyed, Jang Du-bo suddenly lunges forward, hoisting Min-soo into the air and roaring, "Kid, where did you learn to cook like that?" Min-soo, flustered, replies that he just helped out at the orphanage. As soon as he hears this, the team leader bursts into loud sobbing tears, snot running down his face in overwhelming emotion. He mutters in happiness, "I've found it. I finally found it. I knew this day would come." Du-bo hugs Min-soo, tightly, yelling excitedly, "Don't you worry, your big brother is here now, my little cutie." He swings Min-soo around the kitchen, laughing boisterously, declaring that Min-soo is the kitchen team's treasure, while the younger boy screams desperately for the madman to put him down. Meanwhile, in the pantry, a pile of candy wrappers and trash lies scattered. The kitchen team's underlings are sneakily gathered, snacking while fuming, because their original plan has fallen apart. They intended to make Du-bo and Min-soo fight, but instead, Du-bo is stuck to him like glue. One guy grinds his teeth, wondering how to make Du-bo hate Min-soo. Suddenly, a sinister idea pops up. If the food Min-soo cooks tastes terrible, he'll surely be hated. The whole group laughs wickedly, deciding to sneak trash into Min-soo's food to get rid of him smugly, declaring that this time Min-soo is done for. However, their smiles vanish when Yoo-seong suddenly appears at the pantry door. With a cold smirk, he declares that he has finally found the cause of the missing supplies all this time. Facing the panicked criminals, Yoo-seong snarls that thieves must face the consequences, even as they scream and challenge him. This is the kitchen team's territory. Yoo-seong doesn't hesitate to punish them. In an instant, he takes down every single person trying to cause trouble for his brother. Looking at the guys lying sprawled at his feet, Yoo-seong breathes a sigh of relief, silently thinking that since Min-soo didn't want to join the kitchen team, he had been incredibly worried for him. Yoo-seong looks at the defeated men and thinks Min-soo is adapting quite well, but he still wonders who pushed his brother into the kitchen team if it wasn't him. Meanwhile, at the warden's office, 2 guards rush in to report, leaving the prison warden incredibly excited. He expected the kitchen team to have had another bloody brawl, but the truth is, a letdown. Instead of a food fight, today's menu is the warden's favorite, egg kimbap. The warden sighs in disappointment, having hoped for a better show than this boring meal. However, to please their superior, the 2 guards perform a ridiculously weird and cheesy ritual to make the food taste better. Though confused at first, after tasting it, the warden nods, admitting the food is actually excellent. Back in the kitchen, the atmosphere suddenly turns serious. Jang Du-bo shouts an announcement that today is a special day, the only one each month, and demands everyone be extremely careful during preparation. Min-soo is bewildered, not understanding what's going on, especially when Du-bo orders them to prepare a brand new cucumber-scented soap bar. He thinks to himself, Is this bath time or cooking time? But his shock peaks when he sees the team leader start grating the soap bar on a grater very decisively. The bizarre cooking process continues with adding olive oil double the amount of soap, then double boiling it over a high flame. Jang Dubo enthusiastically lectures about adding finely crushed basil powder as an essential ingredient for the scent. Finally, he squeezes in mandarin juice to add vitamin E, creating a mixture he claims is both moisturizing and fragrant. Jang Dubo frantically stirs the mixture until all the ingredients are perfectly blended, then orders it to be left to cool. "Done," Dubo shouts proudly, clearly delusional. Min-soo stares at the gooey bowl, dumbfounded. "What on earth is this? Are you planning to eat that?" Dubo laughs gleefully. "Eat it. No way. This is the logistics team's all-natural hair wax." As he speaks, he uses his hand to skillfully slick back his braided hair. The underlings also start, crowding around, primping and begging, "Hey, be careful not to let it clump. Fix the hair in the back for me." Min-soo asks confused, "So it's not food, but hair wax. But what kind of special day is it that makes you guys do your hair like this?" Dubo smirks. "It's the day the new ingredients arrive, because on delivery day, we get to meet the girls from the women's reformatory." Dubo says, wearing a look of anticipation. Immediately, a group of female prisoners appears cheerfully carrying crates inside. "Hey Dubo, why are you guys so late? We took all the good stuff." A mischievous girl notices the new face. "Who's the new guy? Hi there." Dubo explains that once a month the kitchen receives supplies and they have to share them with the women's reformatory kitchen team. For the men here, this is the only perk of joining the logistics team. Just then, a girl is struggling to carry a heavy crate. "Oh, it's so heavy, sister, help me, girls shouldn't carry heavy things." One of Dubo's underlings rushes over, grabs the crate with a beaming face, and loudly declares, "Leave it to me. You don't need to lift a finger, miss." But that's nothing compared to Dubo. To show off his prowess, the team leader handles a stack of crates as high as the ceiling all by himself. This isn't enough. A real man should be able to carry this much. The girls gasp in admiration. "Whoa, Dubo is so strong. Put some more on top. That's so cool." Min-soo stands on the sidelines watching the scene and feeling annoyed. "What the hell are you guys doing? You're going to break your backs. What is wrong with you? This kid looks so cute, and he's so small too." The girls suddenly surround Min-soo, teasing him, making him snap, "Go away, I'm not small." But the anger only makes them more excited. Even when he's angry, he looks adorable. "You're so cute. Let sister help you, okay?" Min-soo stubbornly refuses, but starts to waver. "I don't need help." But seriously, watching the scene, Dubo grinds his teeth in jealousy. That jerk, he dares to slack off just to flirt with the girls. Just as Dubo is burning with jealousy, a small girl shyly approaches him from behind and gently tugs on his apron. The small girl, with her face blushing bashfully, hands him an envelope with a heart sticker stuck to it. She whispers, "Take this before the head sister sees." Jang Dubo's calloused hands tremble as he receives the letter. His heart beats wildly, as if it's about to jump out. With the letter clutched to his chest, Dubo felt a rush of pure joy. He cheered internally. Could this really be a love letter? He watched the girl run off, not forgetting to leave behind one mischievous smile. Dubo was completely lost in his sweet delusions. In the mind of the captain right now was a vision of a perfect future. He dreamt of a grand wedding, where he wore a dapper suit, walking beside his beautiful bride, amidst the applause and blessings of everyone. Dubo even imagined his future wife gently asking, "What should we name our child?" He had only just received the letter and was already planning baby names. The image of a cute little daughter named Yeji, appeared, filling him with bliss. Dobo's delusions went even further, to the point where he saw himself as the father of a large family with 5 kids. He excitedly called out their names one by one. "Echan a Egwon, Jessup, is everyone ready?" The whole family chimed in, yes. Then they all took a cozy family photo together. Back in reality, Dobo was crying and laughing like a madman overwhelmed with emotion. Finally, it was his turn to have this. Let's see what romantic love song she wrote. But the moment he opened the letter, the smile on his face instantly froze as he read the first line. To Section Chief A. Dobo's face, completely twisted in shock. Veins bulged menacingly. Meanwhile, in the quiet kitchen, Minsu was struggling to carry a heavy crate. He grumbled while working, exhaustedly. "Those guys in the cooking squad are too busy helping the girls. They didn't even bother to bring our share." Suddenly, a giant shadow loomed over Minsu from behind. When he realized it was Jiang Dobo, Minsu looked up confused. Dobo stood tall with a chilling aura, growling, "You're the section chief, right?" Minsu calmly confirmed, "Yeah, that's right. What's the matter? What do you need?" "Dobo." The captain suddenly asked a bizarre question. "Do you know what October 22nd is?" Dobo declared loudly. "That's my wedding anniversary 3 years from now." Delusional to this extent, there's no cure for this guy. Minsu was stunned. "What? See, the hell?" Dobo continued interrogating him about Yeji, then roared threateningly, making Minsu tremble with fear. He stated firmly, "Yeji is the name of my 5th child." His insane rage reached its peak. He gritted his teeth and screamed, "She was supposed to be a little girl with a ponytail born into this beautiful world if you hadn't stolen my wife." His eyes turned blood red. Dobo bellowed in extreme fury, "I'm going to kill you, you bastard, who stole my wife." Minsu could only widen his eyes in terror as a giant fist flew straight at him. "Wait, why?" Before he could finish, a crushing punch from Jiang Dobo slammed down right next to his head, shattering the wall behind him in an instant. Minsu quickly dodged, but was still shaken by that destructive power. He shouted in outrage, "What the hell are you actually trying to wipe me out?" Jiang Dobo by now had completely lost his mind. He muttered in his delirium, "Dai Li Minsu, you enemy of my children." "What kids, you psychopath?" Taking advantage of the opening Minsu delivered, a flying kick straight to his face. But Jiang Dobo didn't seem to feel a thing. He quickly grabbed Minsu's ankle and without hesitation slammed him into the ground. Dobo's frenzy didn't stop. He roared, "Daring to steal my future wife, huh?" Minsu realized with horror that if he took one more hit like that, his skull would definitely be crushed. Minsu desperately searched for a way to counterattack. He calculated that if he could just neutralize the monster's right arm, he would be nothing. But reality was much harsher. He realized bitterly that the opponent's reach was too long, making it impossible for him to get close. The nightmare didn't end as Dobo's left-handed punches also packed incredible power. Minsu repeatedly took heavy blows, feeling like his body was colliding directly with giant boulders. The impact force was strong enough to throw Minsu far away. Minsu suppressed the pain and told himself, at least his right hand is still stuck. But Dobo roared, demanding Minsu return everything, and violently ripped the metal cabinet door right off its hinges. Minsu was horrified to realize the restraint was gone. The madman continued screaming about his plan to take So-yeon hiking at Bukhansan, wielding the heavy metal door in a frenzy. Dobo slammed the metal sheet down hard, forcing Minsu to scramble and dodge. He realized he was in a perilous situation, cornered against the wall with no way out. In the moment of facing the cold wall, Minsu suddenly remembered the dead angle tactic his brother had taught him. Dobo ranted about his first kiss with his future wife and threw a punch straight at Minsu's face. Ignoring the murderous intent surrounding him, Minsu coolly replied, "I don't know who Soyeon is, but your dating plan is terrible." He decisively grabbed his opponent and mocked him, saying no girl would want to go out with someone like him. Capitalizing on his opponent's overconfidence, Minsu remembered the position-swapping technique to execute a combo. He decisively turned his body, putting all his strength into slamming the giant into the wall behind him to turn the tide. But no matter how hard he tried, his body didn't budge an inch. Seeing biceps larger than his own head, Minsu knew this fight was uneven. The giant screamed insanely, accusing Minsu of stealing his pure love and his children's future. Dobo violently grabbed Minsu's face and smashed his head into the metal cabinet, making Minsu cry out in agony. He roared in complete loss of control, claiming the punishment for Minsu had only just begun. "Die!" Jiang Dobo screamed insanely and unleashed a crushing punch aimed directly at his opponent's head. Minsu realized in horror that he couldn't dodge this lethal blow. In the cramped space on the edge of life and death, he quickly grabbed an object right beside him to resist. At the same time, at the women's correctional facility, the female inmates were complaining about the heavy kitchen work and expressing how much they missed Sister Seimin. One girl spotted a crate of onions left behind and guessed it belonged to the men's camp, even though her fellow inmates warned her because they feared Jiang Dobo's ferocity. A black-haired girl with a unique style enthusiastically volunteered to take it back. She nonchalantly thought that Dobo was actually quite cute, so there was nothing to be afraid of. Her taste is really weird. She needs to get her eyes checked. Meanwhile, in the men's kitchen, the chase was still chaotic, with the terrified screams of Minsu asking the madman to stop chasing him. Dobo, panting frantically, pursued Minsu around the kitchen tables. He screamed for his punishment to be carried out immediately on the one he considered the enemy of his future family. Noticing the giant had started to tire due to his massive frame, Minsu immediately seized the chance to counterattack. He decisively smashed a tray of eggs into Dobo's face and shouted, "Take this punishment for proof." Raw egg dripped all over his face, making Dobo look even more pathetic and fearsome. Minsu added a sarcastic remark about the smell of chicken droppings and told him to get lost. His fury reached its peak. Dobo grabbed a kettle and a pot, throwing them wildly at Minsu. Minsu struggled to dodge, while cursing him for being a psycho for these lethal actions. But Dobo just screamed insanely, demanding Minsu die immediately. The situation became extremely critical as Dobo threw the very pan full of boiling, sizzling oil. Just then, the girl from the women's wing came humming along, happily approaching the kitchen door. She casually opened it and called out, "Hey guys, I brought back the stuff you left behind." A sudden disaster struck. As the boiling oil from Dobo's hand swung from the pan, flying straight toward the door, Dobo gasped in horror. "No!" Seeing all that oil splashing directly toward the poor girl who had just appeared at the door, Minsu shouted firmly, "Move out of the way!" Without a moment's hesitation, he lunged forward to wrap his arms around her, using his own body to shield her. The scorching oil drenched Minsu's back, and he gritted his teeth, bearing it, enduring the agonizing, flesh-tearing pain as the burning liquid soaked through his shirt. The girl gasped in shock. "Huh!" A shrill scream echoed through the kitchen. Hearing the commotion, Yuseong rushed wildly down the hallway at a terrifying speed. "No! Minsu!" he roared in extreme panic, his heart tightening with dread. Yuseong blamed himself. He came here to protect his brother. He absolutely could not let him suffer any more harm. Yuseong burst into the infirmary breathlessly, asking the nurse, "Room A3, is Lee Minsu here?" Because the nurse demanded. He keep quiet and pointed toward a bed behind a curtain. He's over there on that bed. Yuxiang tremblingly pulled back the curtain, his mouth opening constantly, calling his little brother's name in deep anxiety. But before his eyes, a cold, dry skeleton appeared on the bed, leaving him frozen in terror. Minsu. The skeleton spoke softly in a tone, full of guilt. I'm sorry, brother. I ended up like this. Yuxiang collapsed by the hospital bed in absolute despair. No. How could you look so much like a real skeleton? Ha, ha, ha! Minsu's laughter rang out, shattering the sorrowful atmosphere. It turned out the thing that had spilled on him wasn't hot oil. He was just playing a prank with the skeleton model from the infirmary. Minsu excitedly explained that he almost became a real skeleton, but his smile vanished when he saw Yuxiang's hand trembling violently with rage. Yuxiang loomed over him with an aura that made Minsu stutter, apologizing for taking the joke too far. But, instead of a furious outburst, Yuxiang suddenly pulled his younger brother into a tight hug. Such deep brotherly love, huh? Yuxiang squeezed Minsu tight, his voice choked with relief. Goodness, you nearly gave me a heart attack. Minsu stood stunned by his brother's affection and quietly whispered an apology for making him worry. Behind them, the nurse was throwing a fit scolding whoever had dared to mess with her skeleton model. Just as he calmed down, Yuxiang roared in surprise when he learned Minsu still wanted to volunteer for the cooking crew. Minsu insisted. It was the fastest way to earn bonus points, but he also admitted he was quite scared and hoped his brother would help him. Minsu's eyes burned with determination as he looked straight at his brother and demanded, "You'll teach me how to take down Dubo, right?" Having just escaped death, he was already asking to fight again. Yuxiang smoothed back his hair and smirked dangerously. "Ha, you're really not one to mess with. Ready yet." Shortly after, at the training yard, the warden was extremely impressed by Yuxiang's new initiative. When asked about this strange training method, Yuxiang coldly explained, "This exercise is designed to teach those who dare to challenge authority their true place." He declared clearly, "It's called the dung beetle exercise." The warden couldn't stop praising Yuxiang's creativity. Watching the prisoners crawling on the ground using their backs and feet to push giant boulders across the yard, the warden wondered where these rocks came from and received a casual reply that Yuxiang had brought them from the mountain behind the prison. Under the 1,000-pound weight, Minsu gritted his teeth, his face distorted with exhaustion. He screamed in resentment, "Kang Yuxiang, you jerk! Can't you teach normally for once?" Yuxiang calmly adjusted his glasses and praised his brother for doing a great job, declaring the end of today's training session. Minsu, drenched in sweat, asked excitedly, "So does this mean I can fight Dubo now?" But Yuxiang just poured cold water on him. "Not yet. Now go roll that one." Immediately, Minsu had to strain himself under a massive rock, screaming in bitterness, "Damn it, Yuxiang, you bastard!" He frantically pushed the rock along while cursing non-stop because of this excessive torture. Seeing his brother was exhausted, Yuxiang finally offered a compliment. "Well done, stop." "All right." Minsu asked happily if it was finally time for revenge against Dubo, but the answer was still a firm no. Yuxiang pointed to a massive concrete wave breaker and coldly ordered, "Next, this gift is for you." Minsu fell into a living hell once again. He screamed in extreme pain as he had to push that ton-heavy material across the ground. Yuxiang calmly adjusted his sunglasses. A bit demanding perhaps, but still fantastic. Minsu lay flat on the ground, silently cursing his brother as a cruel man and wondering when this self-torture would finally end. Yusong sighed, explaining that defeating someone in a completely different weight class was not as simple as he thought. He asserted firmly, "As long as you can make this thing budge even just a little, you will definitely win." Min-soo asked blankly, "Really, truly?" But as soon as he saw the next target, Min-soo was completely stunned. In front of him stood a rock as tall as a tower, making him look pitifully small as he sat before it. He was shocked, wondering if a human could ever make that thing move. Meanwhile, in solitary confinement, Sejun had been locked up for a whole week. He still couldn't understand why. He lost because in reality, Min-soo hadn't even touched him, not even with a single punch. Looking back at his opponent's hopeless attacks in his memories, Sejun bitterly told himself it was all just because he had been too complacent. Sejun sat silently in the cell, eyes thoughtful, telling himself that if he had a rematch, he would certainly win, believing the previous loss was just an accident. However, there was currently a more urgent problem that bothered him. Squatting on the toilet, Sejun, bitterness realized the toilet paper had run out, and the water faucet wouldn't run either. Looking down at his stained sleeve, he realized he had only one choice left: to resolve this miserable situation. He gritted his teeth and brutally ripped a piece of fabric from his very own uniform. Just as Sejun was about to use that piece of cloth, a roll of toilet paper was suddenly thrown in, rolling right to his feet. Yushong's voice echoed mockingly from outside. "Don't use that other stuff anymore. Use this to clean yourself up." Yushong stood behind the bars, coldly reminding him that there was still an important matter for them to discuss. Waiting for Sejun to finish, Yuseong calmly opened the door and stepped into the isolation cell. Just as the warden stepped in, Sejun suddenly lunged to attack from behind, with murder in his eyes, barking a question in a provocative way. "How do you know my sister?" But Yuseong dodged the sneak attack in a flash, leaving Sejun shaken. He realized this warden possessed power. With reflexes far beyond what anyone could imagine, in the blink of an eye, Aoseong counterattacked, pinning Sejun to the floor with ease. He looked disappointed and let out a remark, sarcastic about his opponent's cheap sneak attack. Seeing Aoseong swing his fist down, Sejun could only squeeze his eyes shut, resigned in his helplessness. Waiting and waiting, but the blow never fell. Sejun timidly opened his eyes and looked around, full of suspicion. Aosong suddenly wore a radiant smile and suggested, "If you're that curious, why not just ask yourself? She's leaving." He casually held up the phone, currently on a call with Ga Semin, right in front of Sejun's face. At that same moment, at a cosmetic and dermatology clinic, Semin's phone rang incessantly. On the screen, the caller's name clearly displayed as #1 husband candidate. She answered and softly called out, "Hello, Kang Aoseong." Semin calmly pressed the phone to her ear, cutting straight to the point, asking, "Have you met Sejun yet?" Recognizing the familiar voice, he stammered, "How do you have my sister's phone?" Semin, anxiously, she bombarded him with questions about whether her younger brother had been released from the reformatory yet, and is he hurt anywhere. Unexpectedly, she requested, "Aosong Kang. Aosong, I have a secret to tell you. Could you cover your ears for me?" Aosong obediently replied, "Oh, sure thing," then turned around and covered his ears tightly. Semin carefully double-checked. Sejun, did Kang Aoseong cover his ears? After receiving a nod of confirmation from her younger brother, she took a deep breath and suddenly screamed madly through the phone, "You idiot!" Semin's rage exploded. She scolded him mercilessly. "You brainless moron! Is your head full of instant noodles or something? What are you doing? Do you think I'm that easy to trick? You noodle-brained jerk!" Semin continued to scream about the hardships she had to endure. "What a cursed brother you are! Thanks to you, I had to deal with all sorts of trash. Even after getting out, I still have to run around trying to fix this mess. If you plan on staying silent, then just shut your mouth. Even in prison you, still cause trouble, don't you even think about me. Look up, you jerk, are you listening? Answer me, you fool. Seijun stood frozen, his face bloodless, facing the sudden outburst of his sister. Meanwhile, at the prison training yard, a gigantic rock stood tall like an unimaginable challenge. Minsu was straining with all his might, muscles bulging. Sweat pouring down, he pushed hard against the rock. He gritted his teeth, using both his hands and feet to focus his strength in extreme pain. The fellow inmates standing nearby watched and whispered, "Has it moved yet?" Another guy stated firmly, "Not at all, it hasn't budged an inch." The crowd started drifting to daily gossip, like how the dinner menu was codfish. One guy shouted toward Minsu, "Hey Minsu, give up." They began talking about the day Seijun would be released and worried about a new battle coming up. One guy wondered about Minsu's goal in trying to move this rock and received the answer that if he could do it, he would challenge Dubo. I really hope he doesn't fight Dubo. There are many strong guys in this prison, but Dubo is truly the top of the food chain. Just taking one hit from his right arm. Anyone is as good as done. Look at how Changsu was ruined, that's enough to understand. And the inmates began to fear Minsu would meet the same tragic end. Despite the warnings, Minsu was still crazily pouring all his strength into the giant rock. He gritted his teeth and roared, "Damn it, I will move it no matter what." Meanwhile, at the solitary confinement room, the rage of Ga Semin showed no signs of stopping. She screamed through the phone, "I raised you so carefully, yet you turned into this idiot. You don't even realize who is trying to help you, and you're just barking nonsense." Semin reminded Seijun that she had struggled to find someone to help, yet he went and picked a fight with that very person. She bitterly cursed, "Just stay there and rot, you fool. If you come out and cause any more attention, I'll tear you apart, you jerk." Unable to take the scolding any longer, Seijun decisively pressed the end call button. On the other end, Semin was shocked. What, he dared to hang up on me? He really wants to die, Seijun. This time you're in for a world of hurt. She regretted not having time to tell her younger brother to be careful. Just then, a nurse timidly poked her head in to announce that the doctor had heard all of her vulgar language and was waiting to see her, making Semin only able to utter a shy, "Ah." Aosong casually took the phone back and asked, "The call ended, huh?" Seijun sat slumped on the floor, exhaling with exhaustion, without the energy to even talk. He looked up at Aoseong and asked again to be sure about his relationship with his sister. Upon receiving confirmation that Aoseong was indeed Minsu's brother, Seijun was pensive. "So you are the one who taught him how to fight, right?" After a while, Seijun looked straight at Aoseong with a determined gaze and declared, "I will do whatever you say, so teach me too how to fight." Meanwhile, at the prison cafeteria, the atmosphere was becoming more chaotic than ever. The underlings in the cooking team were scrambling because the food kept getting burned, causing the whole team to be punished repeatedly. They were afraid if this continued, the whole gang would be kicked out of. The logistics team,